You're going to pay for all the pain and suffering you've caused. The reason? Because you couldn't stay beautiful. Dad, what are you talking about? I asked, my heart racing. My name is Michelle, and just moments ago, I felt a sense of achievement like never before. Today, I finally paid off my mortgage. It had been a long journey. My husband Daniel and I took out a loan right after we got married, a 35-year mortgage that we agreed to split equally. Fortunately, we managed to save a bit since the land belonged to my grandfather, and we had permission to build on it. But even with that advantage, paying back the loan was no easy task. Once our daughter Lisa, now a high schooler, was born, I found myself constantly juggling work, childcare, and housework, barely catching my breath. Daniel wasn't much help around the house, so most of the responsibilities fell on me. The only reason I could manage it all was that I worked from home. Daniel had initially promised to take on more of the financial burden, saying, "Just because you're home doesn't mean I'll dump all the work on you. I'll cover more of the finances." Trust me, that promise, however, only lasted for a few years. His attitude shifted about 3 years into our mortgage repayment, right after Lisa was born. "You've got it easy being home all day. I bet you take naps when you're not up at night with Lisa. The least you can do is get the housework done," he'd say, belittling my work-from-home job. To him, it was nothing more than a hobby, just a way for me to earn some extra pocket money. But the reality was far different. Deadlines, projects, and constant demands made working from home just as stressful as any office job. And balancing that with housework and taking care of Lisa, it was exhausting. Daniel never understood that. There were times when I seriously considered leaving him. Once, I even brought up divorce, but he tearfully apologized, saying he wanted to keep our family together, and we had Lisa. I didn't want to jeopardize her future or cause her emotional distress, so I held on, trying my best to keep things together. But today, after years of sacrifice, we finally paid off the mortgage. I thought this would be a new chapter for us, a fresh start. We were celebrating at a fancy restaurant, just the three of us, when Daniel leaned in with a strange look on his face. "So, you've paid off half the mortgage now," he said casually, sliding a piece of paper across the table. "Could you sign these divorce papers?" I stared at him, stunned. The moment we achieved something monumental as a family, he asked for a divorce. I had dressed up a little more than usual and was savoring a delicious meal. It felt like a well-deserved celebration. That's when Daniel took out the divorce papers. There had been no signs leading up to this moment. "Mom, congratulations on paying off the mortgage," Lisa beamed. "Thank you, sweetheart. Now, we need to start saving for retirement," I replied, feeling relieved but already thinking ahead. "Oh no, does that mean we can't splurge?" Lisa teased. "Don't worry, we'll still enjoy ourselves, but we also need to save for things like your future study abroad program." "Thanks, Mom, I'll help with saving too. Just let me know what I can do." Lisa and I were having such a hopeful conversation. Without the mortgage, we could save more quickly, and we were optimistic about how to use our money in the future. It was touching to see my daughter, now a high schooler, mature enough to talk about these things. And then, out of nowhere, Daniel dropped a bombshell. "You know, Michelle, I just don't see you as a woman anymore. The way you've been working so hard is honestly a turn-off. I can't deal with it any longer. I'm planning to marry this younger woman I've been seeing. So could you move out?" He said it casually, completely oblivious to the shock on Lisa's and my faces. "Her name's Amelia. Want to see a picture? Isn't she cute? She's totally different from you, even when she's working. She looks like she's having fun, not stressed at all. She's a real social butterfly, unlike you." I stared at him, disbelief freezing me in place. "Wait a minute, Daniel. The reason I've been working so hard was to pay off our family's mortgage. Do you have any idea how difficult it was to pay half on a work-from-home salary? I was also busy with all the housework, something you never helped with." "Well, housework is a woman's job, isn't it? I'm just no good at it." "I wasn't good at housework either," I shot back, "but I did it for our family. We just paid off the mortgage. Shouldn't this be our moment to enjoy together? When I suggested divorce years ago, you begged me to stay because of Lisa." "I've changed my mind since then," Daniel replied, irritation creeping into his voice. Despite being in a fancy restaurant, the mood had soured completely. "What can I say? Younger women are just more attractive. Sure, I admired how you paid off the mortgage with your little work-from-home job, but that doesn't compare to youth." "That's terrible, Dad, that's awful," Lisa interrupted, her voice sharp with anger. "Apologize to Mom, that's so rude." Lisa didn't understand. Not yet. But Daniel just shrugged, turning to me. You get it, don't you? Michelle, women are like appliances, newer models perform better, and everyone wants them, right? Comparing me to an appliance? How rude, I snapped, still trying to process the cruelty of his words. Well, I don't have any feelings for you anymore, so it's only natural I say rude things, don't you think? As for not divorcing because of Lisa, sure, I said that at the time, but it was just an excuse. Daniel's words were hitting me like a train, and before I could fully grasp the weight of what he was saying, he continued, back then, I thought using Lisa's name would make you reconsider divorce, but in reality, I wasn't thinking about her at all. I just didn't want to let go of someone who'd do the housework for me. I stared at him, stunned. Can you really say that in front of Lisa? What kind of parent are you? He shrugged, completely indifferent. What does being a parent have to do with anything? I've always put myself first. This whole sacrificing yourself for your child's sake, that's just self-satisfaction, isn't it? Don't drag me into that. His words were unbelievable. Sure, Daniel had always been a bit selfish, but I thought he still cared for Lisa in his own way. I never imagined he would say something like this so openly in front of her. Look, I feel bad leaving a woman your age all alone, Michelle, just like you. That's why I'm giving you all our assets, Daniel said, as if he were doing me some great favor. Dad, what are you talking about? You literally just told Mom to leave, Lisa retorted, her voice full of disbelief. That's why I'm giving you the money, but in exchange, I'm taking the house. Consider it alimony, he stated casually, as if this made perfect sense. Alimony? Why would Mom owe you anything? Shouldn't you be the one paying for having an affair with a younger woman? Lisa shot back, furious. It's not that simple, Lisa, your mom is at fault too. Daniel smirked. Let's call it the crime of not staying pretty, huh? Oh, and let's not forget the crime of prioritizing her daughter over her husband. He laughed out loud, taking a sip of his drink as if it were some kind of joke. Lisa's eyes blazed with anger at his nonchalance, but he didn't seem to care in the slightest. His coldness was unbearable, and yet there he was, dismissing everything like it was just a game. I felt an eerie calm wash over me, or maybe my thoughts were just frozen in shock. I couldn't grasp what was happening, it was beyond comprehension. Daniel felt like a stranger, someone entirely alien to me. He said, I'm giving you all the money, but since we've been prioritizing mortgage repayments, there isn't much left. I'm keeping the house for myself. The alimony is for not staying pretty and for prioritizing Lisa over me. None of this made any sense. I was desperately trying to find the right words to address this bizarre, alien version of Daniel. I thought involving lawyers and our families might be the practical next step, but before I could speak, Lisa jumped in. By the way, Dad, is this young woman you're talking about the one who lives about 5 stations away? She asked, her voice steady. She's a bit older than me, right? You met her about 3 months ago, didn't you? Daniel looked taken aback. What? How do you know that? Lisa, ignoring his surprise, continued while glancing at her smartphone. My friend's dad got into a similar situation recently. A woman approached him, trying to steal his attention away from his wife. But unlike you, he and his wife saw through her intentions and kept her at bay. Daniel's face flushed with anger. Lisa, how can you talk to me like that? I'm just telling the truth, Lisa said calmly. I heard that the situation at my friend's house was tough for a while, but what's important is what comes next. It seems this Amelia targets men who are already in relationships. She likes the thrill of stealing them, rather than genuinely liking them. Daniel's face went pale as Lisa showed a few photos from her phone. Look at this. The first photo is of my club senior being approached by her. The second is of a classmate of mine. Both of them have girlfriends, and Amelia told them, look at me, not your girlfriend. What does that mean? I asked, confused. It means she enjoys taking other people's men, Lisa explained. She doesn't genuinely like them, she just enjoys the chase. Daniel seemed stunned, his face blank for a moment. Then, regaining his composure, he shot back defensively. No, Amelia isn't like that. Don't spread lies. I love her, and she loves me. Stop making false accusations just because you're a high schooler, he added, frustration evident in his voice. Even high schoolers should know a thing or two. Lisa remained unshaken. Dad, what about the reason for the alimony? The so-called sin of prioritizing your daughter and not staying pretty. What kind of joke is that? It's not funny at all. Daniel's anger flared. That's no way to talk to your parent. You're being disrespectful. Lisa responded firmly. and you're being really rude to Mom, claiming alimony for such bizarre reasons. The house is in Mom's name, right? And when it comes to the mortgage, Mom was the one who paid more, especially under the guise of child support. The contributions to household chores have been vastly different, too. If you really want a divorce, you should cover the cost of the house, which is in Mom's name. That includes the full price of the land, and the one who should leave the house after paying alimony and enjoying yourself with Amelia is you, Dad. At Lisa's words, Daniel seemed momentarily at a loss. Perhaps, deep down, he recognized he was on the losing end of this argument but was unwilling to admit it. He tried to counter Lisa's points, his desperation evident. You're just trying to avoid the divorce and making up stories. Amelia doesn't have a hobby of stealing husbands. She told me I was her destiny, Daniel blustered, his face reddening. Lisa, unfazed by Daniel's protest, continued to examine the menu with excitement, seemingly indifferent to his attempts at justification. Daniel's frustration grew. Amelia and I are bound by true love. You're just trying to interfere with that. You could even pay the alimony as an apology for that. Lisa responded with mock enthusiasm. Oh, really? I didn't realize you knew so much. Despite being just a high schooler, if you're so certain, why not involve a lawyer? Daniel stammered. What? You think you're right, don't you? But Mom won't accept such an absurd alimony claim. Yes, it's clear that Mom won't accept such a ridiculous claim. Lisa agreed. So let's do this. We'll finalize the divorce papers today, and we can deal with the alimony and property division with a lawyer later. It's settled then. We'll handle it when we get home. Let's focus on dessert for now, Lisa said, her tone final and calm. Despite being initially taken aback by Daniel's incomprehensible statements, his words gave me the courage I needed. Regardless of who Amelia was, I could no longer be with Daniel. If he couldn't live with us, then there was only one thing left to do. I took a deep breath and signed the divorce papers. The three of us then quietly finished our dessert and left the restaurant. The following day, we went to the city hall to submit the divorce papers. The divorce was finalized, and Daniel and I began living separately in weekly rental apartments. Of course, I stayed with Lisa throughout the process. We each hired lawyers, and began discussions about dividing the assets and handling the alimony. No lawyer would entertain Daniel's ridiculous claims about my appearance or my prioritization of our daughter. Daniel's liability was clear, and even he, who had dismissed Lisa and me so easily, appeared vulnerable when faced with legal scrutiny. Eventually, he conceded his faults. The divorce was finalized with Daniel giving up his claim to the property. The house was officially transferred to my name, a fitting consequence of his long-standing neglect of household responsibilities. The outcome was the best for Lisa and me. Daniel, however, continued his bravado, saying, I don't need any money. I've got Amelia. You can cling to that old house until you've paid off your 35-year mortgage. I'm starting a new life. Daniel's bravado didn't last. It turned out Amelia was exactly as Lisa had described, someone who enjoyed toying with men in relationships or marriages. As soon as Daniel and I separated, Amelia lost interest and dumped him. This unexpected turn of events left Daniel floundering, stripped of his assets and his so-called true love. He came back to me, desperate to reconcile. Michelle, I'm sorry, please forgive me. You're the only one for me. I'm the only one for you, right? I was unmoved. What are you talking about? I'm exhausted from doing housework for you. Besides, I don't think I'll stay beautiful in the future. I plan to prioritize Lisa and myself from now on. I can't risk being sued for alimony again. So reconciliation is out of the question. Absolutely out of the question. The blunt rejection must have been a severe blow to Daniel. Since then, I haven't heard from him. I've moved out of the weekly rental and am now happily settled in my own home. Mortgage paid off with just Lisa's and my efforts. Lisa is preparing for college entrance exams, and I'm committed to supporting her in every way I can.
A housekeeper who doesn't even cook is grounds for divorce, right?
Benjamin, my husband, punched me in the stomach. I don't think he put much force into it. But that's where my precious baby is.
Hey! Stop it!
I was so surprised by Benjamin's unexpected behavior that I overreacted. Seeing this, Benjamin let out a cheerful laugh.
If you don't like it, just make lunch already. See, even the kid is saying, poor daddy, starving because of mommy. Okay, I get it. Just stop. Just don't hit my stomach.
I screamed almost like a shriek, and finally, Benjamin stopped his hand.
I'm tired. Just do as you're told from the start. Make it quickly, right now.
Satisfied with his own words, Benjamin looked up with content. And then, he froze as he looked at the computer screen in front of him. What? Somehow, I got off the chair, kept Benjamin at bay with scissors nearby, and said,
"This time, I won't let you make excuses." "Well, not that you'll need to."
This has to be a lie. I won't let him get away with excuses this time. I'll expose his true nature for sure. My name is Evelyn, I'm 29. I work at an electronics manufacturer, but I'm currently on maternity leave, so I'm almost like a housewife. I say almost because there's a reason. I do some chores and participate in irregular remote meetings. That's the only thing I insist on. The reason is, I handed over the project I was involved in to my junior when I got pregnant. I wanted to know the progress, so I insisted on participating. But I hardly ever speak up, it's more like I'm just observing. Still, I was happy to participate and know how the project is progressing. But that's just working for free. It's a waste of time, you should quit. The one grumbling with dissatisfaction is my husband, Benjamin. He's 36, 7 years my senior. Originally, he was my boss at work. Benjamin, competent at his job, was always relied upon by those around him. Furthermore, I was struck by his kindness and guidance, and before I knew it, I was drawn to him. It was considered lucky to have married someone like Benjamin, and many envied us, but after we got married, he changed. Don't say things like that. My job is just doing odd jobs and attending meetings, you know? Sometimes, I'm just observing. That's a waste of time. If you have time like that, why don't you clean the room? I've noticed dust accumulating under the furniture lately. Benjamin pointed at the gap between the TV stand and the floor. That spot can't be cleaned without crouching down. Now in my last month of pregnancy, it's utterly impossible to crouch with this belly, making it hard to breathe just from walking. So, indeed, I've neglected cleaning in some areas. I do what I can, but I'm sorry. Normally, a wife's parents would come over to help with the housework at a time like this. But you don't have that, do you? Benjamin said this with a sigh. My heart ached. My parents died in an accident 10 years ago. It's been 10 years, but it still feels like just yesterday. Yet, Benjamin carelessly belittles me for not having parents like now. And I always ended up apologizing. I'm sorry for causing you trouble. Then, Benjamin would always smile with satisfaction. You're lucky to have married such a generous man like me. I never thought I'd marry an ordinary woman with no special qualities like you, Evelyn. This is how Benjamin satisfies his ego. It's a daily repetition of sarcasm and boasting. He wasn't like this before we got married. Maybe it's common for both men and women to change after marriage. Sadly, Benjamin has a very good public image, so when I complain to others, they don't believe me. I get irrelevant responses like, "You're just being spoiled," or "It's nice to have someone so reliable." I could have endured it if it were just as everyone says. I could just ignore it. But lately, I've been at my wit's end with Benjamin returning from work. When the doorbell rings from evening to night, that's the signal of his return. Even if I was in the middle of housework, I would stop everything and rush to the entrance. And while watching the door open, I'd hope, please, let Benjamin be in a good mood today. When he's in a good mood, it's just reports of the company's doing well or I landed a contract. The problem is when he's in a bad mood.
Arg, so annoying. Acting all high and mighty just because they're a client. Those outdated fools.
As soon as he enters the entrance, Benjamin is stomping around, angry. We welcome back. He throws his bag at me and heads to the shower, cursing me under his breath. This whole routine terrified me. When this continued day after day, I even considered divorce. I first talked to a coworker, but they didn't believe me. Benjamin? That's hard to believe. You're exaggerating. Look, you're pregnant and probably just tired, right? Maybe you need a change of scenery? It was as if they were saying I was the one being unreasonable. Sadly, I understand where my coworker is coming from. The Benjamin we worked with was perfect in everyone's eyes. Always smiling, gentle in his words and actions, and calm. It's hard to believe that he could change like this. I wouldn't have believed it myself in the past. Maybe it's just temporary. Perhaps he's just irritable because he's busy and tired. I decided to think positively. It's not like he's physically harmed me. Though my body tenses up when he throws things or yells, he's never hurt me. I'm sure someday Benjamin will be as kind as before. That's what I hoped and prayed. No one believes that Benjamin could change like this. But there was one person who might believe me. That was my uncle, Daniel. My grandparents live far away, and my parents have passed away. After the accident, I was left alone, but I had one relative I could rely on. That was my father's brother, Daniel. He had moved to New York before my father, so by chance, he lived close to our family. Daniel looks, honestly, intimidating. He's 6 feet 3 inches tall and well-built, so just standing there can be imposing. But on the inside, he's incredibly kind and wonderful. When I was young, Daniel would often play with me in place of my busy parents. Back then, I thought Daniel was unemployed. He spent that much time with me. I think he doted on me like I was his own daughter.
Actually, I was the first one to ever hold Evelyn, you know.
Daniel and my father would often joke and compete like that. So, after my parents passed away, it was Daniel who supported me. He took care of most of the arrangements while I was in a daze. When I couldn't even bring myself to eat, he'd make tasteless oatmeal or pasta that would fall off the fork with just a touch. It wasn't delicious, but I remember I ended up eating it anyway. It was also Daniel who found me a job when I dropped out of college after my parents' accident. I feel bad for using your connections. To my hesitation, Daniel kindly said, Don't get it wrong, it's just an introduction. How you works from here on out is up to Evelyn. I won't know anything about it. What I couldn't repay to my parents, I want to repay to Daniel. That was my goal. I had endured living with Benjamin, who only spewed verbal abuse, but one day, Benjamin finally raised his hand to me. It might not have been intentional at first. I knew I had to be careful that day because Benjamin's mood was worse than usual. But I was also feeling unwell and didn't have the energy to deal with it. So, when Benjamin complained about everything, the dinner menu, my face, my expression, the housework, I accidentally muttered under my breath, "Ah, enough, so annoying." The moment those words left my mouth, I could feel the room freeze over. This is bad, I've done it now. I need to apologize quickly. I started to apologize immediately, but it was too late. A magazine flew right past my face. Benjamin, in his anger, threw it at me.
Hey! What did you just say? Did you just tell me, who's tired from work, that I'm annoying? Hey!
From there on, it was useless to say anything. Benjamin started throwing whatever was nearby, one after another. Fortunately, it seemed he still had some reason, as he only threw light or thin items. Having done it once, the barrier to doing it again must have lowered. From that day, even though he wasn't using much force, Benjamin started to raise his hand over trivial matters. Scared, I thought of consulting Daniel. Actually, Daniel works at the same company as us. He introduced me to this company because he could be more accommodating if it was his own company. Benjamin never mentioned Daniel, so he probably doesn't know we work for the same company. But I had introduced him before, so he was aware of Daniel as part of my family. I was sure Daniel would believe me. I had something like a conviction about it. But, unfortunately, Daniel was on an overseas business trip at the time. Concerned for me. "I can listen over the phone if that's okay," Daniel said. For a moment, I thought of leaning on him, but knowing Daniel, if he found out about my situation, he might fly back. That wouldn't be fair to the company or Daniel. Reluctantly, I decided to wait for Daniel's return. I tried consulting coworkers and friends, but no one believed me, as expected. Moreover, somehow, the fact that I was talking about Benjamin reached him. Benjamin then said, "I meant it as a form of affection." He apparently said this with a lonely smile. Everyone completely believed this excuse. As a result, I was treated as just a woman with an overactive imagination. One day, while I was working in the room as usual, Benjamin came in. Today is unusually a work-from-home day for Benjamin as well. I knew in advance because he told me.
"I'm hungry, where's lunch?"
Benjamin said, almost like he was throwing the words at me. "Oh, just wait a bit. I'm working right now."
"Huh?"
Benjamin let out an annoyed tone. With that voice, I immediately understood. Here it comes. The usual thing. I braced myself in an instant, preparing mentally. Usually, it's an arm or a leg. And then, Benjamin, with an unpleasant smirk, approached me.
"A housekeeper who doesn't even cook is grounds for divorce, right?"
Benjamin punched me in the stomach. I don't think he put much force into it. But that's where my precious baby is.
"Hey! Stop it!"
I was so surprised by Benjamin's unexpected behavior that I overreacted. He had never laid a hand on my stomach before, no matter what. I curled up in the chair, trying to protect my belly with my arms, encircling it. Tears welled up in my eyes from fear and anxiety. Seeing this, Benjamin let out a cheerful laugh.
"If you don't like it, just make lunch already. See, even the kid is saying, 'Poor daddy, starving because of mommy.' Ouch! Please! Please, stop!"
How can he do such terrible things? I'm his wife, and the child in this belly is his. I couldn't understand at all.
"I don't want to do this either, you know? But what can I do? It's because you won't make lunch. Right? Poor daddy, huh?"
Even as he spoke, Benjamin's hand didn't stop. He kept hitting my stomach over and over, relentlessly. Resisting was difficult while sitting in the chair. I could only focus on defending myself.
Okay, I get it. Just stop. Just don't hit the stomach."
Screaming almost like a shriek, Benjamin finally stopped his hand.
I'm tired. Just do as you're told from the start. Make it quickly, right now."
Satisfied with his own words, Benjamin looked up contentedly. And then, he froze as he looked at the computer screen in front of him. What? Somehow, I got off the chair, kept Benjamin at bay with scissors nearby, and said, "This time, I won't let you make excuses." Well, not that you'll need to. This has to be a lie. The one to respond to the flustered Benjamin, turning pale, was someone on the computer.
I wish it were a lie. I never thought you could be such a despicable person.
The one holding his head on the screen was the manager. Other employees were also looking at this with faces of disbelief.
No, that's not true. I didn't hear anything. That's right. I was framed. I was deceived.
Trying to ingratiate himself, Benjamin clung to the computer.
That sounds terrible. I told you, didn't I? I'm working, so wait a bit. I haven't lied or deceived anyone. So, then you should have clearly said you were in a remote meeting. Then I would have.
Benjamin started to say, but caught himself. He was about to say, then I wouldn't have hit you. Benjamin, who cares so much about his public image and how he's perceived by society. The cunning and sly Benjamin wouldn't even utter a harsh word at the company, let alone raise a hand. That's why no one believed me when I complained. I felt a sense of despair at that time. But then I thought a bit. If they wouldn't believe me, I needed proof. Knowing there was a remote meeting while Benjamin was working from home, I had secretly plotted to expose his true face. I just hadn't expected him to aim for my stomach. That was a lapse in judgment on my part.
Anyway, everyone at the company is a witness now. You can't talk your way out of this. I want a divorce. I don't want to see your face ever again. But, Evelyn, I can't without you.
As Benjamin let out a pitiful voice, the doorbell chimed. Trying to head there, Benjamin blocked my way, trying to stop me.
Wait! We're in the middle of talking. Is it okay to raise your voice like that? The computer is still connected, you know?
Ah. Distracted and flustered, Benjamin let me slip by him towards the entrance. But just before I could get away, he caught up and grabbed my arm.
Stop! Let go! This spot is out of view from the computer, perfect. Hey, we need to come up with an excuse together. Should we say it was a prank? That's the safest bet. It'll be more believable coming from you, so you tell everyone. No way! I'm tired of watching your face, being worked like a slave, and living in fear.
Help me. Just as I screamed inside, I heard a noise from the entrance, and then the door burst open, and someone entered. Seeing who it was, I collapsed on the spot in relief.
Are you okay, Evelyn? Daniel.
It seems Daniel was secretly participating in that meeting too. He must have rushed over immediately after seeing the video. It was fortunate that the entrance door was unlocked. Are you hurt? How's your stomach? Daniel rushed to my side and pulled me away from Benjamin as if rescuing me. Then, shielding me with his own body from Benjamin, he hid me behind his back. Thanks to Daniel's broad back, I couldn't see Benjamin anymore. Likely, Benjamin couldn't see me either.
Daniel, Evelyn's uncle, right? Long time no see.
Peeking around Daniel's back, I saw Benjamin trying to force a smile and nodding in greeting. Daniel straightened up and looked down at Benjamin. Being considerably taller, Daniel made Benjamin look very small and frail.
Evelyn, can you stand? You should rest on that sofa over there.
Ignoring Benjamin, Daniel supported me and moved to the sofa. Sitting down provided some relief. Benjamin tried to approach me, but Daniel stopped him with a threatening look.
After you rest a bit, let's go to the hospital just to be safe.
That's an overreaction. It was just a little nudge. That's part of affection, a couple's touch.
How could anyone think that way about what happened?
You be quiet. We'll have a thorough discussion once we've confirmed that Evelyn and the baby are safe. Don't worry, the meeting was recorded.
So you saw that because you're with the same company. Benjamin made a fist in frustration and fell silent.
Evelyn, you married quite the man.
I felt sorry facing Daniel's stern look and sigh, unable to say anything. The hospital visit confirmed that the baby was fine. Relieved, I felt my whole body relax. Then, Daniel, Benjamin, and I decided to head to the company. Daniel said, "Think of the baby. Leave the rest to me." But this was a matter between Benjamin and me. Even if it's Daniel, I couldn't leave everything to him. We could have postponed it to another day, but knowing Benjamin, the more time he had, the more likely he was to come up with something. Now in the last month of pregnancy, with labor possibly starting at any time, it was best to resolve this quickly. I am a mother. I have a duty to ensure this child can be born into a safe environment. Upon arriving at the company, we were immediately led to a separate room. Daniel must have contacted them in advance. The employees present at the meeting must have also given their testimonies. In the large conference room were the meeting members, Benjamin, Daniel, and me. I took my bag from Daniel and pulled out the divorce papers. I had gotten them from the municipal office a long time ago and kept them in my bag. Benjamin looked puzzled for a moment, but then forced a troubled smile. I admit I did things that could be misunderstood. It's my fault too, so I'll accept the divorce. I have no problem with the compensation in the divorce court, and I'll pay child support. Perhaps because he was in front of everyone, Benjamin seemed unusually understanding. His acceptance made the conversation progress smoothly. However, when we reached a certain point, Benjamin froze. You want me to resign or transfer? Yes. I plan to return to work after my maternity and parental leave are over. It wouldn't be good for either of us if you were still here. That's why. I actually want you to leave. Benjamin stared at me intently and nodded. I see. But what does the company think?
What are you trying to say?
Not to boast, but I believe I'm a valuable asset to the company. I have good performance. No issues with interpersonal relationships. Plus, I have a wide network among peers and clients. Indeed, the outwardly competent Benjamin could be considered an ace at the company. He was what you'd call a key player. He was so well regarded that it was said it was only a matter of time before he became an executive. On the other hand, you, for better or worse, is just an ordinary female employee. Oh, I'm not trying to belittle you. Just stating the facts. I understand. Moreover, as a mother of a young child, inevitably you'll take more leaves. You'll probably end up inconveniencing the company, coworkers, everyone. This was something I had considered since becoming pregnant. Without parents, I had no one to rely on. In any situation, I had to manage on my own. While it's an unavoidable circumstance, to the company, I might be seen as a troublesome employee. I couldn't help but understand what Benjamin was trying to say. He implied that the company would choose him, the valuable ace, over me, who brought the inconvenience of potential risks, even though he had caused this issue. See? So the best thing is to forget all this and get along again. That's the best for the baby too.
No, I can't do that.
What? Benjamin looked utterly astounded.
Just endure and accept it again? That's ridiculous. Nothing would change. Do you expect me to endure endless days of sarcasm, living like I'm in hell?
At my words, employees whispered among themselves, looking puzzledly at Benjamin. Especially the female employees glared at him coldly.
Well, sure, we had our disagreements as a couple. But it goes both ways. That's both ways? The balance is off. I was always the one being hurt.
Benjamin seemed unable to hide his agitation against my counterattack.
You're like a completely different person. What happened to you, Evelyn?
That's right. I've been enduring until now. I had hoped that maybe you would change someday. But I never thought you'd lay a hand on our child. The onlookers' gazes sharpened even more. Benjamin forced an awkward smile, his forehead beading with sweat. Evelyn, that's because... Getting back to the point, shall we leave it to the company to decide who should leave? Oh, yeah. Perhaps convinced he would be chosen.
Then, I'll go ahead and submit these divorce papers now. From this moment, you and I are strangers. Wait, Evelyn, I mean... Goodbye.
I wanted to get away from him as quickly as possible. With Daniel by my side, I submitted the divorce papers. Despite Benjamin's strange confidence, it was certain he would be the one to leave. Although it felt slightly underhanded, Daniel is, after all, the CEO of our company. With the CEO on my side, the outcome was clear. It does feel a bit unfair, though. Muttering this, Daniel furrowed his brows sternly.
What's wrong with that? The fault lies with that man. To think he doesn't even remember the face of his own company's CEO, and yet dares to call himself a valuable asset. The nerve!
I vented a little to Daniel. Daniel was red in the face with anger. Thanks to our talk, I felt much lighter. So, on the drive back from the city hall, we talked eagerly about the arrival of my child. I had no more worries. Now, I could give birth in peace. A few days later, I gave birth safely. It was a beautiful baby girl. Daniel came to the birth as well, shedding tears like he was welcoming his own grandchild. From Benjamin,
I want to meet her too.
I received a message. Has he forgotten what he did before our child was born?
It's too dangerous for you to meet her.
I replied, keeping a safe distance. While I'd prefer to cut ties completely, I left WhatsApp open as an escape route to avoid provoking him. He sends updates almost daily. After being fired, he managed to find employment in the same industry. However, due to the nature of the industry, rumors about Benjamin had already spread. Everyone's cold to me, and I can't find a girlfriend. He lamented. According to a coworker, I'll never meet someone as good as Evelyn again. Benjamin reportedly regretted his actions. If that were true, he shouldn't have done what he did. Currently, Daniel and I are discussing names for the child. We're struggling to come up with a good one. Moreover, Daniel was already head over heels.
I'm not letting this child get married off.
Showing an incredible amount of adoration. Though my parents couldn't see their grandchild, I'm glad Daniel is happy. Someday, when my child starts to speak, I want her to call Daniel Grandpa. I'm sure he'll cry, despite his imposing frame. I'm looking forward to it.
Get to cleaning the house already. Slaves don't get to rest.
That's what my husband Anthony said as he splashed beer on me. I was so taken aback by the suddenness of it all that I froze. My body was wet, and the distinctive smell of beer filled my nostrils. As I stood there in disbelief, Anthony hurled more abuse my way. What should I do? What does Anthony want from me? Just when I felt cornered and at a loss for words, I heard a voice from the computer. The moment he heard that voice, Anthony, who had been red-faced and angry just seconds before, stiffened and collapsed on the spot. My name is Chloe. I'm 33 years old. I work as an office clerk at a company in a certain region, putting my all into my job every day. My days consist of dealing with large amounts of data and documents and punching numbers into a calculator. I think to myself that the company should make more use of computers, but being one of the younger employees within the company, I didn't have much say. I worked while being mindful of my superiors and was forced to attend drinking parties I didn't want to go to. My spirit was utterly exhausted.
These numbers are wrong again.
I'm sorry.
Please, I'm really counting on you. You've been making a lot of mistakes lately.
Yes, sir. The mistakes kept piling up due to my fatigue, further diminishing the little confidence in my work I had to begin with. I wondered if quitting would be better for me. It was during these times that a certain man started coming to the company as a salesperson. This man was the person who would later become my husband, Anthony. From just one look, it was clear that Anthony was a kind man. Even to me, who only did things like making coffee, Anthony was always kind. I found myself drawn to Anthony before I knew it. However, I couldn't bring myself to express my feelings to Anthony. It was all one-sided on my part, and I was sure Anthony didn't think anything of me. That thought was always in my mind. But a few months after Anthony started coming to the company, to my surprise, he approached me. We started going out for drinks after work, which led to us dating. After 2 years of dating, we were able to get married. With our marriage, I quit my job, and Anthony and I started a new life in a new home. We picked out a place we both liked after visiting various real estate agents. Quitting my job and thinking about the happy life ahead with Anthony made my heart lighten. However, the life I had envisioned was not to be. A month into our marriage, I noticed Anthony was acting differently. "Welcome home, Anthony. You're early today." "Yeah, well." He didn't look at me and didn't even greet me back properly. Seeing Anthony so different from usual genuinely worried me. After that, Anthony seemed somewhat listless.
Are you okay? You seem tired.
Huh? Oh. He seemed more irritable than tired. Indeed, he was different from his usual self. I thought maybe he was just tired today, and didn't think much of it. However, the next day and the day after that, Anthony's attitude remained unchanged. Gradually, it wasn't just his attitude and greetings. He stopped taking the sandwiches I made for him and didn't contact me when he was coming home late. I could tell that he was starting to treat me carelessly. Maybe I had done something to offend Anthony. As I pondered over this, my own time flew by. I was filled with insecurities about my behavior and thoughts of Anthony. Things changed a few months after Anthony started showing a change in his attitude. He began to verbally abuse me out of nowhere. One evening, Anthony spoke to me without touching his dinner. "Hey, Chloe. Do you realize?"
Realize what?
Without a subject, his sudden question was impossible to understand. I urged Anthony to explain further. Without any sign of remorse, Anthony said, "Your cooking is terrible." "What? Terrible?"
Yeah. I guessed you hadn't noticed. Think about how I feel, having to eat such terrible food every day.
I had often cooked meals during our dating period, but he had never made such a complaint before. He always seemed to enjoy the meals, and he had told me many times they were delicious. Watching him like this, I never thought Anthony would find the meals I made unpalatable. "You used to say it was delicious."
What? Did I?
Seeing my anxious face, Anthony started laughing loudly. Then, after a good laugh, Anthony put down his fork and went back to the bedroom. Looking at the untouched meal, I felt indescribable. I too put down my fork and kept replaying Anthony's words in my mind. Had he been hiding that he found the meals unpleasant all this time? Or had my cooking skills just declined? I thought about it a lot, but couldn't come to a satisfying conclusion. However, one thought did seem to make sense. His recent behavior, his words just now. I thought maybe Anthony had come to dislike me. At first, I thought maybe he was just a little tired, but his recent behavior has definitely been too much. The Anthony I knew would have told me if he was tired. It must be so. But that would mean I did something to make him dislike me. However, I can't think of anything that might have caused it. My doubts about Anthony only grew. Then, another 2 months passed. Day by day, Anthony's attitude worsened, and the Anthony I knew during our dating days seemed to have disappeared completely. He verbally abused me daily and made a point to show his irritation by making noise.
Do you even know how to clean properly? Clean? Yeah. You haven't done the bathroom or the toilet, and the living room is filthy too.
I always tried to keep the house clean, doing the bathroom and toilet cleaning daily. I even vacuumed every day. What else does Anthony want me to do? While I was feeling down, Anthony didn't stop hurling insults. What hurt me the most was him saying,
"Why did I even marry a woman like you?"
Was all the love he professed just a lie? The moment I thought that, I felt tears streaming down my cheeks.
Ugh, why are you crying? Cut it out with the fake tears.
In the past, if I cried, he would comfort me. Now, he only says cruel things. Anthony went back to the bedroom, mocking me. Initially, we shared the same bedroom, but now I've been pushed out. I've gotten quite used to sleeping on the living room sofa. I knew I was being taken for granted and not treated with respect. But I couldn't bring myself to decide on divorce. I still had faith in Anthony. However, as expected, my feelings didn't reach him, and his treatment of me only got worse day by day. "Hey, dinner." As soon as I thought he was asking for food,
"I can't eat this terrible food,"
he would complain. I suggested eating out a few times, but for some reason, Anthony stubbornly refused.
"Why?"
He wouldn't give me any reason. Anthony would come home from work, complain about the entrance being dirty or the toilet being dirty, and demand food. Since his attitude started to change, I've often wondered what I did wrong, but seeing Anthony's behavior up to now, I've concluded he's just using me to vent his stress. The contradiction between what he says and his actions, constantly finding fault and berating me, it's clear he's just venting. I understand Anthony is tired from work. But I'm human too. Being constantly criticized, I too accumulate stress. I had hoped for a change, but I've reached my limit.
"Hey, Anthony. Can we stop this?"
I gathered my courage to talk to Anthony.
"I don't know if it's because you're tired from work, but can you stop taking it out on me? I'm also stressed from being criticized by you every day."
Anthony looked at me in surprise, speechless.
"Huh? What are you talking about?"
"It's just like I said.
You come home and immediately start complaining about me."
"I'm trying my best, you know?" Anthony was half laughing as he listened to my words. But as soon as I finished speaking, his face turned red with anger.
"You know what? Who do you think you are? You're a housewife, but you can't clean or cook properly. What's wrong with complaining? Living carelessly like that. That's what pisses me off."
"Then, can you tell me what's wrong so I can fix it?"
"No, I won't say. It's clear that nothing will change even if I tell you. You need to figure out what's wrong by yourself."
Anthony evaded the question when I asked what was wrong with me. This conversation alone made it clear that Anthony only saw me as an outlet for his stress. Our relationship worsened even more after I expressed my feelings. The verbal abuse and attitude towards me intensified. I sighed, reminiscing about the happier times in the past. However, one day, I received a call from an unexpected person. It was my mother-in-law, Jody. Jody and I get along well, but we don't call each other often, so I quickly answered the phone. Hello?
Oh, Chloe, how have you been?
Jody's voice sounded very cheerful over the phone. After some small talk, Jody brought up the main topic.
Huh? Handmade?
I was thinking I wanted a new hobby recently, and I remembered that you make handmade crafts. I was hoping you could teach me some stuff. Actually, I make handmade crafts as a hobby. I buy materials and tools, and spend time on my hobby when Anthony is not around. I had told Jody about my handmade crafts before, but I never thought she would remember.
Yes, of course. If I can be of any help.
That call led me to frequently talk with Jody. Our calls weren't just ordinary calls, but video calls. Initially, we just talked normally, but as I wanted to show her what I was working on and explain the materials in detail, we switched to video calls. Our houses aren't that far apart, but going there every time is honestly a hassle. When it's time for my appointment with Jody, I enter the room where my crafting tools are and craft while talking on the phone. My heart, which was distressed by Anthony's actions, felt purified while I was talking with Jody. By the way, how have things been with Anthony recently? Are you getting along?
Yes. I'm glad to hear that.
I didn't talk about Anthony to Jody. I didn't want to worry her, and more than anything, I wanted to forget about Anthony during the time I spent with Jody. Even after starting to do video calls with Jody, Anthony's attitude remained terrible. I was desperate not to let Jody catch on to anything about Anthony. However, one day, an incident happened. It was a few weeks after I started doing video calls with Jody, on a Saturday. As usual, after finishing housework, I was on a video call with Jody when the door to the room opened.
Anthony!
Turning around, I saw Anthony standing near the door with something in his hand. Completely unaware of the video call, Anthony approached me.
Hey, what are you doing here? What about the cleaning? The laundry? Why aren't you doing them?
I've already done them. What are you talking about? Didn't you see?
Huh? I didn't see anything.
Well, he had been watching TV in the living room the whole time, so his response was expected. You're always just watching TV.
What? Shut up.
Anthony, further aggravated by my words, said,
Get to cleaning the house already. Slaves don't get to rest.
And then he splashed something he was holding on me. I soon found out what it was. It was beer. I was drenched in beer, smelling of it all over. And Anthony laughed at the sight. Shocked by the suddenness, I was speechless.
If you understand, then get to work.
Then, he kicked over a stack of books nearby. Anthony's mocking laughter filled the room. I couldn't take any action and just watched as the books got soaked with beer. But then,
Is that all you have to say?
I heard a familiar male voice from the computer.
Huh? Dad?
Yes, the voice was that of Anthony's dad. My father-in-law, Liam.
What are you doing? I saw everything. You verbally abused Chloe and then splashed beer on her. When did you become such a terrible person? It's a misunderstanding, Dad. That's not what it was.
As Liam began to speak, the bravado from before was nowhere to be seen in Anthony, who now appeared completely cowed. Despite seeing Anthony like this, Liam didn't stop his anger.
What misunderstanding? It doesn't seem like this was the first time, was it? What are you playing dumb for? Really, when did you change like this?
Liam was clearly exasperated. It's understandable to be dismayed if your own son was doing such terrible things. Ignoring Anthony, who was just standing there with his mouth open, Liam made a proposal to me. "Chloe, won't you come to our house right now?"
Right now?
"Yes. I'm worried about leaving you in that house. If it's okay with you, I can come to pick you up right away." I was honestly surprised by Liam's invitation. But, thinking about it calmly, staying with Anthony alone, I really couldn't predict what he might do next. "Would that be okay?" "Of course. I'll be there soon. Anthony, if you do anything to Chloe, you won't get off lightly." With that, Liam hung up. I immediately started preparing to go to my in-laws' house, waiting at the entrance for Liam to arrive. Anthony didn't do anything to harm me, looking uneasy instead. A few minutes later, my in-laws arrived, and I headed to their house with them. When Liam opened the front door, Anthony looked frightened in a way I had never seen before, clearly very afraid of Liam.
Anthony, you should spend tonight reflecting on your actions alone. Understand?
Dad, I'm sorry.
What are you saying? The person you should be apologizing to isn't me, it's Chloe. Just think about what you've done alone. Reflect on it. Got it?
Liam said this and led me outside. I had managed to change my clothes, but didn't have the chance to shower. Liam wrapped a towel around my body and put me in the car. A few minutes later, when we arrived at my in-laws' house, Jody was waiting for me.
"Chloe, are you okay?"
"I'm sorry." Jody gently embraced my shoulder and led me to the bathroom. "Take your time. There are clothes and towels here for you." "Thank you." The events had unfolded so suddenly that my mind was still trying to make sense of everything. After taking a bath, I changed into the clothes provided and headed to the living room.
"Thank you for the bath."
"Don't mention it." Liam was looking grim, and Jody appeared concerned as they sat on the sofa. I took a seat on the sofa as Jody urged me to. "Chloe, can you tell us everything that's happened up to now?" It wasn't the first time, was it?"
"Well,
please, Chloe." I didn't know where to start and kept silent. But my in-laws patiently waited for me to speak. A few minutes later, I began to recount everything that had happened since our marriage and why I hadn't consulted them earlier. They listened quietly until I finished speaking.
"And so, it came to what happened earlier. Why didn't you tell us? I didn't want to worry you. I'm sorry." "Well, I understand how you feel, Chloe, but don't let that guys like him get carried away like that."
"I'm sorry." I was scolded, but I knew they were both worried about me. After a while, silence fell again. Both seemed to be pondering, and the atmosphere didn't invite interruption. After a few minutes of silence, Liam finally spoke slowly. "Do you still love Anthony?"
"What?"
Anthony is likely to repeat the same behavior. Maybe it would be best to consider a divorce seriously." Jody nodded in agreement next to Liam. Divorce. I had never expected Anthony's parents to suggest divorcing him. Certainly, it might be easier to divorce. But, could this be an opportunity for him to change? The dilemma of still being in love made the situation even more difficult. However, they quietly waited for my decision. After a few minutes of thought, I made my choice. I'll get a divorce. I decided on divorce. There was a part of me that wanted to believe in Anthony, but after much thought, it was clear he had never listened to anything I said before. If I didn't divorce and went back, he would likely return to his terrible attitude towards me again. That's what I thought. My decision seemed to have relieved them both. After some discussion, we decided I should file for divorce as soon as the next day. This way, I could finally be free from Anthony. Even though I had hoped for Anthony's change of heart until the very end, part of me felt relieved once the divorce was decided. The next day, I went to the house with my in-laws, holding the divorce papers in hand. As soon as we rang the doorbell, we could hear footsteps inside, and Anthony came out. Chloe. And Dad and Mom. Seeing the faces of my in-laws, Anthony showed an obviously disappointed expression. It should have been clear that I wouldn't return alone so soon after what had happened. We entered and sat down on the sofa. My in-laws also sat down beside me. Anthony was still flustered and hadn't even apologized to me yet. Watching him, I said, "Anthony, I want a divorce." "What? Divorce?" "I've thought about it, and I no longer have the confidence to continue with you. If we start living together again, your attitude will just revert back, and over time, you'll forget about what happened this time and repeat the same behavior, won't you?"
That's not.
Can you say for sure that won't happen? Besides, you haven't properly apologized to me yet. It's clear you haven't reflected at all from your actions. "I'm sorry." Anthony quickly apologized after hearing my words, but it was too late. I had no intention of forgiving Anthony anymore. It's too late for everything. Just sign the divorce papers quickly. With my in-laws on my side, I could boldly express my thoughts to Anthony. Too late.
Anthony, what were you thinking last night? Not even apologizing to Chloe, and now you're surprised to be faced with a divorce. If you were aware of how terrible you've been, being divorced wouldn't come as a surprise. I did do terrible things, but I never thought it would lead to divorce. Not expecting to be divorced? You really have a blissfully ignorant brain.
Anthony shrank back at my words. All his bravado seemed to have been left somewhere far behind. In the end, Anthony reluctantly signed the divorce papers. Our relationship ended without a single sincere apology from him.
By the way,
as I was packing to leave the house, I asked something that had been on my mind.
Why did your attitude change all of a sudden after we got married?
There was nothing like this when we were dating. Reluctantly, Anthony opened up. I didn't want to be looked down upon. That's all.
Looked down upon? Did I ever act like that when we were dating?
No, you didn't.
Keep your weird fantasies in check. It's really unbelievable.
Okay. With that, I left the house with my in-laws, never to return again. I felt a bit sad to leave the house itself, to which I had grown attached. After filing the divorce papers, I stayed with my in-laws. Being a housewife without my own income, my in-laws told me I could live with them. Of course, I was nervous at first. But gradually, I got used to the atmosphere of my in-laws' house and could even enjoy doing handicrafts with Jody. During this time, Anthony tried to contact me, but Liam made it clear through my mobile phone.
We're cutting all ties with you.
And he never contacted me again. Anthony probably never imagined I would be living with his parents. Seeing that he tried to contact me even after the divorce, it was clear he still looked down on me. Divorcing such a man was the right decision. I can't thank my in-laws enough for encouraging the divorce. Now, a year after the divorce, I've started living on my own and working part-time, leading a fulfilling life. I felt it wasn't right to keep relying on my in-laws' house forever. Though I've moved out, I still keep in touch with my in-laws and continue to receive their support. They've treated me like their own family, even though we're not related by blood. My current goal is to repay my in-laws. What could I do to make them happy? Today, I continue to live with gratitude towards my in-laws.
Now Benedict is totally smitten with me. Ah, it's a crime to be this beautiful. You're kidding, right? Didn't you notice? He's mine now. If Benedict falls for this woman, everything I've built up will be for nothing. Does Benedict really know what he's doing? Or even understand what's happening? My world goes dark. My name is Elise. I'm a 45-year-old woman teaching yoga in the suburbs of Boston. When people hear yoga instructor, they might picture someone refined, but that's usually the younger female instructors. To be honest, nearing 50, I'm not exactly a hot commodity, so my life depends on Benedict's income. My husband Benedict is older than me, 48 years old. At 48, most people worry about health checkups, especially metabolic syndrome. But not Benedict. He's fit and youthful, something I'm proud of. When I show his pictures to my yoga students, they're amazed and start comparing him to their own husbands. So I often tell new students, bring your husband to my yoga class, and he could look like this. Benedict and I met because I was his yoga instructor, so it's not entirely untrue. I teach yoga a few days a week and spend the rest of the time as a housewife. I thought this would be my life forever. That was until she showed up. She changed everything between Benedict and me. It started during a trial yoga class. One day, a familiar woman joined the class. I struggled to remember where I'd seen her before. I felt bad for not remembering her face, but maybe deep down, I didn't want to remember her because she was such an unpleasant woman. The answer came from her. During the break, she approached me. It's been a while. Remember me? Seeing her malicious smile, I remembered. This woman was Lori, a childhood friend. Lori and I live close to each other and have gotten along well since we were little, playing together. Lori was cute and popular, even rumored to become an idol someday. But she had another reputation, and Lori's reputation stood out in other ways too. She took things that didn't belong to her, from erasers and umbrellas to dolls, and as we grew older, even someone's boyfriend. Men adored her, but women couldn't stand her. And let's be honest, I was one of those women. We've known each other's families since we were kids, and I was often the victim of her thievery. And now, she's right in front of me. We lost touch after her family moved away during elementary school. How did she even find me? Keeping my professional smile, I responded, Lori, it's been ages. Of course I remember you. I moved back to town, saw your face on a yoga poster, and thought it looked familiar. But it seems anyone can be a yoga instructor, even you, so I could probably do it too. She hasn't changed a bit. Hearing her words, I knew immediately, and decided not to mention Benedict in my usual class introduction today. Having my life partner stolen at this age is no joke, and if anyone could do it, it's Lori. After the trial class, I got up and ended up having a late lunch with her. As soon as we sat down, she started bragging about how many men were after her, how she got scouted by a famous talent agency. I couldn't tell if she was lying or not, but she kept talking. She seemed to want to show off her current life. Living on the top floor of a high-rise isn't that great. The elevator ride is long, and the people on the lower floors are snarky. But the worst part is my husband, Joshua. He's an attorney, so the money's good, but he's fat. Thanks to him, I can be a housewife, but it's hard. You couldn't handle it, still teaching yoga at your age? Her face was soaked in smugness. I bet she stole Joshua from someone else too. I just listened, hoping she'd get bored if I didn't react. I thought that Lori would get bored if she knew I wasn't particularly responsive. Did you get married? Really? What's your husband like? As plain and unimpressive as you? Her words made my blood boil. I felt like she was negating my happy, precious life. And I wanted to see her reaction when she saw Benedict. My husband is 48, but doesn't look it. My students often ask if he's in his 20s. He works for a foreign financial institution, so he makes a decent income. I showed her a picture of Benedict. For a moment, I felt a small victory over Lori, but it was short-lived. Wow, I think I like him. I messed up. That was her signal that she'd found her next target. My momentary feeling of superiority vanished, leaving only regret. But it's okay. She doesn't know where I live or how to contact me. If I keep quiet, everything will be fine. Holding back my rising anxiety, I continued to make small talk with Lori. But behind the casual chatter, there was an unspoken battle. Lori was trying to dig up more about Benedict, and I was dodging her questions. I managed to end the conversation without giving anything away. I felt relieved and went home, but Lori started showing up at my yoga classes more frequently, probing for information. I dodged her questions and eventually started avoiding conversations with her altogether. Maybe she sensed my attitude because one day she suddenly stopped coming to yoga class. Yes, she's finally given up. We might have been young once, but now we're both in our 40s. Things can't always go your way at this age. Serves you right. I felt like I had finally won and did a little fist pump. But the real winner was Lori, because she had already gotten close to Benedict. For a while, life returned to normal. I taught yoga and supported Benedict by taking care of the house. It was so peaceful that I completely forgot about Lori. In hindsight, it was the calm before the storm. While I was enjoying my peaceful days, I noticed that Benedict's behavior had started to change. Sorry, I won't need lunch for a while. I have plans with a client. Or, I'll be late from work, so go ahead and eat dinner without me. Actually, don't make dinner for me. I'll eat out. He used to prioritize home over work. But if it's for work, I can't complain. If Benedict works hard, it might lead to better opportunities for him. So I had no choice but to support him. Around the same time, I started teaching a new evening yoga class, so I didn't have time to think too much about it. So I took Benedict at his word. I was naive to think that both of us getting busier was a good thing. Now that I think about it, I was really stupid. Then one day, Lori showed up in my yoga class again. During the class, she kept giving me this smug look. It's the face I hate the most. After the class, while I was cleaning up, Lori approached me. She said to me with a relaxed smile and a mocking smile, with a mocking tone, and a confident smile, she said, "Your husband is really something. He has such elegant table manners, and his dimples when he smiles are so cute. Oh, did you know? He has an interesting beauty mark on his back." That's when it hit me. She hadn't given up on Benedict. She had already gotten close to him. The elegant table manners and the dimples when he smiles meant they had shared meals. Could it be why Benedict stopped taking lunch from me? But more importantly, the interesting beauty mark on his back? If I connect that with Benedict coming home late and smelling like a different soap, the answer is clear. She's already slept with him multiple times. I was horrified. What are you even talking about? I never introduced you to Benedict. How did you even meet him? Are you dumb? Even if you don't tell me, I can easily find out from other students in the class. You're so naive. I just had to stake out your house for a few days after asking around. And I found out all about your husband, especially since you've been showing off pictures of Benedict. Now he's smitten with me. Ah, it's a curse to be this beautiful. You're lying. Didn't you notice? Benedict is mine now. If Lori takes Benedict from me, everything we've built together will be for nothing. Does Benedict even know what's happening? Is he okay with this? My world went dark, thinking about the days that might be lost and about Benedict. Lori left, laughing so hard she was practically holding her stomach. I was left alone in the class. Calm down. First, I need to talk to Benedict. Maybe it's just Lori's delusion. Above all, I wanted to confirm how Benedict really felt. What will happen to what we've built together? And what do you think of me now? When I confronted Benedict after he came home, he bluntly said, "Sorry, everything Lori said is true. I might have done you wrong, but you're not innocent either. Your cooking is bland, and you never compliment me when I come home from work. You're always ordering me around, telling me to exercise and use this lotion. Lori, on the other hand, is kind. She always says I'm wonderful, and her cooking is delicious." Wait, the seasoning and the exercise? It's all for you? And what about our promises? You said back then. Benedict cut me off and yelled, "Shut up. It's all your fault. You're always bossing me around. I don't need a woman like you anymore." We're married. Can't we talk this out? I have reasons for asking you to. Enough. I'm going to Lori's house tonight. She's kind and doesn't boss me around like you do. With that, Benedict left the house. I was left alone, sighing. I never thought Benedict would feel that way. Sure, I've asked him to do various things, but did he see those as orders, even though it was all for his sake? Everything I've done for Benedict was just negated by the man himself. But his way of putting it was unfair, blaming everything on me and insisting he's not at fault. And then saying he's going to Lori because she's kind. What is he, a grade schooler? He's almost 50 for crying out loud. Is this who Benedict really is? I admit I might have been wrong in how I acted, but reflecting on what Benedict just said, my love for him suddenly cooled. Besides, he's infatuated with Lori and doesn't seem to care about me. That's when it hit me. If that's the case, I might as well hand Benedict over to Lori, clean and clear. If I do that, I might be able to get back at Lori twice as hard. Thinking about the way she laughed at me, I made up my mind. Next time, it's my turn to laugh. I'll get back at her. Lori showed up at the yoga class the next day. Just like yesterday, she looked at me with a smug face throughout the class. Enjoy that look while you can. I told myself that and calmed down. After the class, Lori approached me again, just like yesterday. Today, I have a date with Benedict. He stayed over at my place last night, and it felt like we were a real married couple. Oh, sorry. I forgot. His legal wife is right here. If you like Benedict that much, go ahead. He doesn't seem to love me anymore, so you can have him. Lori looked disappointed for a moment, expecting me to show a frustrated face, but it was only for a second. Oh, giving up so soon? Well, he's already smitten with me, so it makes sense. Hey, Lori, aren't you married to Joshua? Have you talked to him? What? I can easily get rid of that fatso. I'm fabricating evidence of his infidelity to claim alimony and leave him. Disgusting. That's what I thought. She takes what she wants and discards it when she's done. I feel so sorry for Joshua. Well then, I'll gladly take Benedict. You plain boring women always lose. Spend your lonely age alone. With that declaration of victory, Lori left. Let her say what she wants. That day, I had Benedict sign the divorce papers. He must have already heard about today from Lori. He signed without asking any questions. Watching him, I thought how quickly our happy days had come to an end. But I don't want to have regrets. Before either of us could change our minds, I submitted the signed divorce papers to the court. Now, I'm single. I rented an apartment nearby and started living alone. However, living on just a yoga instructor's salary felt a bit insecure, so I started dipping into my savings. But even while living alone, I was in contact with someone without fearing the future. All I had to do was wait for their response. A few months later, Lori came back to the yoga class. This time, she waited until after the class. She came up to me and suddenly started crying.
What's wrong with that man? He was so wonderful at first, but as soon as we got remarried, he started gaining weight and his skin got bad. Now he's just a regular fat old man, and his salary is low. I had high hopes because he said he worked for a famous financial institution. What's going on?
Here it comes. This is what I've been waiting for. Holding back a smirk, I calmly responded to Lori. Don't worry, listen carefully. The reason he was slim and handsome was all due to my meal planning and exercise guidance. Now that he's left me, you've been spoiling him, so he's just reverted to his natural state. That's the real Benedict. And about the foreign financial institutions, it's actually a subsidiary of a related company of foreign financial institutions. I just exaggerated a bit. Yes, I had been managing Benedict's meals since before we married. I even packed him a balanced lunch every day. I also made sure he ate dinner at home, so I had complete control over his diet. I encouraged him to exercise and even got him to use men's lotion for his skin. All these efforts had helped him maintain a youthful appearance, even in his 40s. But all that ended when we divorced, and his new spouse, Lori, just spoils him. She probably doesn't think about balanced meals or encourage him to exercise. It's only natural he'd revert to his old self, living like that.
What? So you're saying he was only good because of you? What's that about?
It's fine. If your love is true, he'll become wonderful again. Not that it matters to me.
No way. I don't want that fatso. Take him back.
I'm amazed at how this woman can talk about people as if they're objects. But of course, I have no intention of taking him back. Too bad. I have already found someone else to marry. Here he is. I showed Lori a photo of my new fiancé on my phone. The man on the screen was a well-built, kind-looking man wearing an attorney badge.
What? Who is this guy? He's amazing. Hey, I'm a better match for him than you are. Let's swap, okay? How about Benedict for him?
Now it's my turn to laugh out loud. Why don't you ask him yourself? Ask him to marry you, or, ask him to get back together with you, because this man is your ex-husband, Joshua.
What? How did Joshua turn into such a great guy? You're lying. And I can't stand the idea of you being with such a handsome man.
Still saying that, huh? I was utterly amazed. I'm not lying. The person I'd been in contact with while living alone after divorcing Benedict was none other than Lori's ex-husband, Joshua. I was in contact with him, of course, to get back at Lori. First, I dramatically changed Joshua's appearance through meal planning and exercise. Of course, it was all to make Lori regret later. But this revenge is just the first step. The second step is yet to come. Did you forget that Joshua is an attorney? I've already told him about your attempt to fabricate his affair. You should be expecting a lawsuit for damages from him any time now.
What?
Oh, and from me too. I'm suing you for having an affair with my husband. And of course, I have the best attorney, Joshua. It's too late for Lori's small cry. Oh, I almost forgot. Benedict got his current job through a client from my yoga class. I've told them about this whole mess, and they were really disappointed. Who knows what will happen to Benedict's job now? Lori was speechless. I left her standing there and gracefully exited the class. Serves you right. You've taken so much from me, and now you've even taken away my husband. You got what you deserved. After some time, Lori had to pay a hefty sum in damages due to our lawsuits. She had to sell the luxury apartment she got from divorcing Joshua, and now she and Benedict are living in a cheap apartment. Just like I said, Benedict's salary got even lower due to his demotion, and now Lori has to work too. Some of my yoga students work at the same place as her, so naturally I've told them about Lori. My students are all saying things like, "What a terrible woman, Elise. You've been through a lot. We'll make sure she gets what's coming to her. I can't wait to give her a hard time." As for me, I happily remarried Joshua. Thanks to my dedicated meal planning and exercise guidance, he's undergone a dramatic transformation from his previous overweight condition, and is even featured in magazines now. His legal practice is booming, and he's swamped with work, which is a good problem to have. Unlike Benedict, Joshua listens to my advice and appreciates it, so I'm even more motivated to prepare his meals. Oh, and the luxury apartment Lori had to give up? We're living there now. From the windows of our high-rise apartment, the building where Lori and Benedict lived looks so small, it's almost laughable. My revenge is complete. From now on, I plan to live a peaceful and happy life with Joshua.
I'm Emma, a 28-year-old fashion designer. I recently got married, and despite struggling with unfamiliar household chores, I'm enjoying newlywed life. My husband, Benjamin, who is quiet but kind, was originally an employee at a client's company. He proposed after we had been dating for 3 years. Having a beautiful wedding has been a dream of mine since childhood. I was really looking forward to the ceremony. We planned to have our wedding at the Foresta wedding venue I had always admired as a child. It's a luxurious venue with a log cabin-like charming chapel in nature, a party hall, and accommodations, all exclusive for one couple per day. Its flexibility for personalized plans makes it highly popular nowadays when smaller weddings are the trend, which also makes it hard to book. I was glad I applied early. There was one more thing I was looking forward to. I designed my wedding dress, and my mom, who is skilled in sewing, made it by hand. Seeing me wanting to wear dresses as a child, she started sewing, referring to various sources, and now she's as good as a professional. It was a natural course for me, who grew up watching her happily sewing late into the night, to pursue a career in fashion design. Almost all the wedding preparations were complete, and I was looking forward to the big day. I thought post-wedding blues wouldn't affect me, except for one concern. The phone rang. I saw a name I didn't want to see, but reflexively answered. "Hello?" "Ah, Emma." Oh no, not again. The caller was my sister-in-law, Olivia, a constant source of stress. "Did you properly cancel the wedding? If you haven't yet, do it quickly." "I've told you many times, I can't and won't do that." "Huh? I don't approve of your marriage to my brother. It's disgusting that an old lady like you is marrying him. Just cancel it already." Click. The call ended, and I was at a loss. Olivia, a 22-year-old senior in college, is 6 years younger than my husband. With their parents having dual incomes, Benjamin often took care of young Olivia. A beautiful brotherly love. That was fine, but Olivia grew up with a severe brother complex. She loves her brother too much and sees me as an enemy. Despite us being already registered as married, she hasn't given up. Initially, I hoped we'd get along eventually, but since booking the venue, she calls me daily, hurling blatant insults. Then another notification sounded, this time a message from a friend. "Hey Emma, there are weird comments on your Facebook." I quickly checked Facebook and saw 10 comments on my marriage announcement. Stuff like, "This woman is a bitch. She's deceiving a kind man, the worst. I heard she dated a married man at work." All baseless slander. Of course I had no idea. What is this? Such awful content. Looking closely, all comments were from one account. Checking the profile, it read, 22 years old, active college student, loves her brother. Seeing posts about secretly taken photos of my husband, love messages to him, and resentful posts about me, his wife, I felt a chill rather than anger. I deleted the comments and closed Facebook. Olivia's actions, more terrifying than I imagined, were causing me increasing anxiety. But with our wedding approaching, I didn't want to stir up family troubles. That was a mistake. A few days later, during a work break, I checked my mobile phone and saw several missed calls from the venue. I had a bad feeling. I immediately called back.
"Sorry for contacting you repeatedly, but actually..."
I was stunned by what the planner told me. The contents are as follows. A woman had suddenly visited the venue, demanding the cancellation of our wedding. Suspicious, the planner explained that the cancellation wasn't possible without the contract holder's presence, and then asked her to leave. Enraged, the woman started insulting the venue, loudly hurled abusive words at the planner, and ended up damaging the venue's decorations, leading to police involvement. It happened on a day when Foresta Wedding was holding a bridal fair, witnessed by many, causing some couples to leave early. I'm terribly sorry. I hung up the phone with tears in my voice. With shaking hands, I called my husband. In a faint voice, he said,
"I'm sorry, Emma, my sister. She's at the police station now with Dad picking her up."
The venue, learning the woman was our relative, had kindly refrained from filing a police report. So Olivia was released. I left work early that day and waited at home for my husband. He came home looking exhausted but apologized earnestly.
"I'm truly sorry."
As I watched his remorseful expression, tears welled up in my eyes. I should have talked to you about Olivia sooner.
"Did she do something to you?"
Yes, well, I calmly explained the daily phone calls and the attacks on social media, while listening intently, sometimes changing his expression. He kept bowing his head as if understanding my urge to blame him, even though he wasn't at fault. Despite everything, I still wanted to be happy with him. Later, we had a meeting with our in-laws and my parents about Olivia.
"Our daughter has caused you a lot of trouble, and we are truly sorry."
Watching in-laws bowing deeply, I said, "Please raise your heads, James and Scarlett. I just want Olivia herself to show true remorse." Hearing this, Olivia, looking uncomfortable, bowed her head. "I'm sorry."
Do you even understand what you've done? What do you mean, I'm sorry?"
As my father-in-law, red-faced, was about to lash out at Olivia, I asked calmly, "Why did you do this, Olivia?" Considering her past behavior, her actions seemed driven by more than just sisterly love. Olivia then blurted out, I wanted to be the most important person to my brother. It's unfair and wrong that he'll prioritize his wife over me." Everyone except Olivia was at a loss for words. "Because once you get married, you're going to prioritize your wife over me, right? That's sneaky and weird. Even if I catch a cold, get hungry, or want to see him, he won't come right away anymore. I don't want that." The in-laws who were listening were dumbfounded and had their mouths open, unable to say anything, and my husband turned his face to me with disgust and hung his head. My parents smiled bitterly and whispered in my ear,
"What do you want to do?"
Realizing Olivia's remorse was futile, I said, "Benjamin, I don't want anything to do with your sister anymore." He responded,
"Okay, I understand. I'll cut ties with my sister and never meet her again. Don't contact us ever, Olivia. Is that okay, Dad?" Okay."
Olivia seemed utterly surprised by her brother's decision. She screamed in shock.
Let's go home.
Although true remorse wasn't achieved, the relief of having no further contact with Olivia was immense. The next day, my husband and I took a day off work to apologize to the venue about Olivia's incident. Also, I told Olivia she's not welcome at the wedding anymore, and that I would be bringing the money for the decorations she broke. Right before leaving the house, my husband was rummaging through his bag, looking troubled. "What's wrong?" I asked.
"Oh, I can't find the house keys," he replied.
"What?" I exclaimed.
"Maybe they're at my parents' place. I'll call them later," he said.
When we arrived at the venue around lunchtime as promised, a visibly uncomfortable wedding planner and a man in a suit, presumably the manager, were waiting for us at the entrance. As soon as we greeted them, they ushered us into a room at the back. I was about to apologize when Miller spoke up.
"I'm terribly sorry, but we have a request. Would you consider canceling the wedding?"
"Huh?"
"If you listen to this, you'll understand what we're asking for."
The man pulled out a voice recorder. As soon as he hit play, Olivia's voice came through. "You guys called the cops, and now my brother disowned me, you know? How are you going to take responsibility for this? Bring out that planner. It's all that ugly woman's fault. Then bring the person in charge and fire her. If you can't fire her, I'll write on social media about how you destroyed my family and ruined this venue." The man turned off the recorder, cutting off Olivia's voice. I can hardly remember what happened next. All my husband and I did was nod our heads, repeatedly saying, "Sorry."
"Sorry,"
Miller said.
"This is business interference, so we must file a complaint this time."
It's not said outright, but if we cancel, it seems they'll avoid making it a criminal case. The planner, exhausted from Olivia's relentless calls, just cried without saying a word. We bowed our heads at the venue again, filled out the cancellation papers, and trudged to the parking lot. Before getting into the car, I looked back and saw the cute white chapel I'd always dreamed of since I was a kid. Something precious inside me broke. Because of Olivia, I couldn't stop the tears. I briefly thought of ignoring Olivia since we cut ties, but that wouldn't be fair to the in-laws. I had no choice but to give up. On the way home, my husband's hand gripping mine trembled the entire time. When we finally got home and I tried to unlock the front door, I found it was already unlocked. My husband had said he couldn't find the keys, but I was sure I had locked it properly. The shoes in the entrance were scattered and turned over. I was shocked. The cancellation of the wedding was upsetting, but now a more direct fear struck me. I heard a woman's laughter from the back room. Unable to contain his anger, my husband stormed into the house. Feeling danger, I desperately followed him.
"What are you doing?"
I was startled by my husband's uncharacteristically deep voice and stood frozen at the scene before me. There was Olivia, cutting up the wedding dress my mother made, laughing maniacally with a crazed smile. "Can't wear your wedding dress, serves you right." I quietly grabbed my husband's fist and called my mother-in-law. After the in-laws arrived and took Olivia away, I hugged the ruined dress. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Following the cancellation, we faced rumors among friends, awkwardness at work, and lectures from relatives who didn't know the whole story. It was a mentally tough time for us as a couple. We moved to a distant place to escape everything, and I quit my job for a while. Yet there was a lingering dissatisfaction, a lack of closure, and my husband felt the same. Then one day, a package from my mom arrived. Inside was the wedding dress I thought had been torn to pieces. "Mom." The letter attached read, "Emma, you can always make a new one. You're not that weak." It was a typical straightforward cheer from her. "Thanks, Mom. I won't be held back by such things anymore. I have to be happy with my husband." After that, I started working as a freelance fashion designer, and my husband got a job in sales at our new location. It was a tough start, but it brought us closer together. After years of supporting each other and living a peaceful, happy life, one day, my husband received a call from my in-laws. It seemed Olivia is getting married, and they desperately want us to attend the family meeting. Apparently, Olivia and her fiancé want me to come along too. My husband initially refused, but then Olivia herself reached out, wanting to apologize. At first, I was furious, but part of me wanted to show her how happy I am now. Maybe Olivia really has changed. Her getting married might mean her obsessive love for my brother has shifted to her husband. After discussing it with my husband, we decided to meet Olivia at the agreed location. It's been a while. The Olivia I saw after a long time looked refined, perhaps due to her experience in the workforce, and she appeared more composed. Thank you for giving me the chance to apologize. I'm so sorry for the terrible things I did. Though I couldn't accept her apology honestly, I told her, I will never forgive what you did to us, but if you're getting married, maybe you'll understand a bit of the pain we went through. We'll attend the family meeting so as not to be a burden on your wedding, but make no mistake, we won't be at the wedding itself, and our interactions will be minimal. After hearing this, Olivia expressed her regret and left. A few weeks later, we stepped into a fancy restaurant for the family meeting. We were immediately escorted to our table, greeting Olivia, my in-laws, and the fiancé's family who had already arrived. Olivia's fiancé seemed like a decent young man, at first impression. He worked as a civil servant and appeared very steady, being 3 years older than Olivia.
Nice to meet you. I'm Jackson, the fiancé, he said. I've been looking forward to meeting you, as Olivia often talks about her brother.
My husband's face stiffened for a moment, but he brushed it off, and we took our seats. Soon, a lavish meal was served. As we enjoyed the exquisite food, the conversation naturally drifted to the wedding.
What kind of wedding do you want, Olivia?
Her fiancé asked. I want a luxurious wedding with an ocean view. It has to be completely private, with delicious food. My wedding dress should be from a famous designer, the best there is. And then, Olivia went on about her dream wedding. My husband, seemingly displeased, put down his fork with a sigh. Was it wrong that I couldn't feel happy for Olivia? I was so infuriated.
By the way, what was your wedding like?
The unsuspecting fiancé suddenly asked. My husband and I exchanged glances. As my husband was about to speak, Olivia interjected. They didn't have enough money for a wedding. That's what she said. The fiancé, flustered, tried to console us, but his efforts felt empty. You must want to wear a wedding dress too, right? After my wedding, you could borrow mine and take some photos. I felt a surge of anger, wanting to punch that detestable face and expose everything Olivia had done, possibly ruining everything. But it was a joyous occasion, and I had to hold back. Then, an unexpected opportunity came my way. Olivia's fiancé's mom, oblivious to the tense atmosphere, said, I was recently invited to my niece's wedding, and the venue was so charming. Surrounded by nature, though not by sea, it was a small, cute place. Look, she showed the fiancé her phone screen, and he was absorbed in the photo. I think it was called Foresta Wedding. Olivia exclaimed, turning pale. Oh, do you know it, Olivia? Maybe you should visit it sometime.
Yeah, Mom, I like the sound of it. What do you think, Olivia?
Yes, sure. Olivia was visibly flustered as the conversation heated up. My chance had arrived. I decided to launch my counterattack. Foresta Wedding is really fantastic. Ignoring Olivia's surprised expression, I continued. We actually wanted to have our wedding there, but it didn't work out. So if you and Jackson could have your wedding there, it would be like fulfilling our dream too. Though it felt like a stretch, I pushed the idea of Foresta Wedding, not wanting to miss this chance. The family meeting ended in time, and on the drive home, my husband and I reflected on forgiving Olivia and laughed uproariously recalling her pale face and weird voice. A few days later, Olivia called furious.
Why did you have to say that? You're just jealous of me. I apologize, but don't get cocky.
Her words were as nasty as ever, unchanged from before. I calmly replied, You tried to belittle us. Who's responsible for us not having a wedding? What goes around comes around. I don't envy you at all. How can someone who hurts others so easily be happy? With that, I hung up. There was no further contact from Olivia. After some time, Olivia's fiancé contacted my husband, saying he had something important to discuss at a private restaurant. We thought he'd come alone, but he arrived with his mom and a dejected Olivia. Starting with an apology for summoning us, the fiancé began. We recently visited for a wedding, and then... On the day they went to visit the booked venue, the receptionist ran off upon seeing Olivia's face. Soon, a man in a suit, who seemed to be the manager, came out.
Excuse me, may I ask your name?
Olivia, red-faced and frozen, didn't respond, so her fiancé nervously answered.
I'm sorry, but we cannot host Miss Olivia here. Please, you'll have to leave.
The fiancé and his mom, confused, asked Olivia for an explanation.
What? I don't know anything. I wouldn't want a place like that anyway,
she retorted without explaining. So they inquired with Olivia's parents. Turns out, Olivia had caused a police incident at that venue before. They came to us wanting to know more.
So that's what happened. Why couldn't you just tell the truth?
My husband asked Olivia.
But it would have spoiled the mood before the wedding.
Yes. My husband and I couldn't help but react with astonishment. I told them everything, sparing no details. Despite Olivia's desperate looks, I couldn't forget the look of despair on the fiancé's face as I finished.
You could really do something like that?
Olivia responded.
I had no choice back then. I only had my brother, but now it's different. I want to be happy with you.
The fiancé let out a big sigh, as if making a decision, thanked us, and left. Olivia chased after him, trying to justify herself. We felt a rush of relief, as if our long-held grievances were finally being aired. Eventually, Olivia's engagement was called off. Ignoring her past actions, she tried to justify herself, which led to the fiancé's strong distrust. A private investigator revealed that Olivia recently sabotaged a colleague's wedding out of jealousy. Recently, Olivia had caused a scene at a colleague's wedding. Jealous of a colleague who married a wealthy man, she spread false rumors about the bride during the reception, chilling the atmosphere. The couple whose wedding was ruined are furious with Olivia and are preparing to sue her. Seeing the trouble she caused, her fiancé's parents also rejected her. During a family discussion, Olivia cried and raged, claiming she was not at fault, and accidentally injured the fiancé's mom, leading to the breakup of the engagement. Afterwards, Olivia tried to return to her former job, but was refused due to the incident at the wedding. Abandoned by her in-laws and facing a lawsuit from her former colleagues, she has become estranged from her friends. Now she's moved to a cheaper apartment and is working part-time jobs. As for my husband and me, I finally wore the wedding dress my mom made. Having dealt with Olivia, we felt ready to take those photos. Though it was just a photo shoot, we were smiling with full happiness. And then, we finally bought our dream home. Both of our careers are on track, and we decided to build our ideal house. And one more thing. Benjamin, look at this.
What? Really? I'm going to be a dad?
Today it was confirmed at the gynecologist that I am indeed pregnant. Yay! Yay! Watching my husband jump for joy, I laughed and imagined us living in our new home. It might be tough, but with a family who has overcome hardships together, I know I'll be okay. Thinking this, I opened my sewing box and started to decorate a tiny dress with needle and thread, filled with wishes for a happy life with our soon-to-arrive child.
Thank you for making me a mom. A new life, still small, had taken up residence in my womb. I believed everyone would be overjoyed. Yet, My husband was engrossed in his acts of betrayal against me. Now, feeling happy 3 years later, I can talk about those times. I am Nell Burks. Back then, I was pregnant. Even past 5 months of pregnancy, the morning sickness continued and I often had to take time off from work. My husband is Greg. We met at a colleague's wedding after party. He, a year older than me, worked at the same company. The first time I heard his singing, I was smitten. Not love at first sight, but love at first listen. I approached him and our relationship began. 2 years later, when I was 27, we married.
Being an only child might be lonely, so we should have at least 2 kids, right?
Yeah, maybe 1 girl and 2 boys?
As long as they're healthy. The order doesn't matter.
Greg, an oldie child, and I with a half-brother. We wanted to give our child siblings. We were excited about having kids right after getting married. Looking back, that might have been our happiest time. But once married, we realized it wasn't all about chasing dreams. We had to plan for the future realistically. We decided not to have children for 3 years, focusing on saving money and enjoying life as a couple. Then, 2 years into our marriage, we relished our time together, indulging in shared hobbies like karaoke and exploring gourmet restaurants during weekends. Recently, Greg started playing golf on weekends, invited by his manager, leading us to spend weekends separately. I spent time doing things I liked. Being alone wasn't too bad. I had no significant complaints about our marriage, but there was something I regretted. That was our promise to not have children for 3 years. I heard from friends who had children, and I even had chances to hold their babies. Gradually, the desire to hold my own child grew stronger. Unable to wait any longer, I brought it up with Greg. Hey, don't you think it's time we had a child? Children are a blessing from God, so maybe we don't need to stick to our plans so rigidly. But Greg responded,
I'm not ready yet. We still have a year left of our 3-year promise. There's so much I still want to do. Having a child now would be inconvenient.
I was stunned. I had expected him to agree readily, but his unexpected reaction left me disappointed. This was something I couldn't do alone. Resigned to waiting, I decided to stick to our plan for another year. However, 6 months later, I unexpectedly discovered I was pregnant. I had been feeling nauseous for about a week and thought I had caught a cold. Then it dawned on me that my period was late. Could it be? The thought crossed my mind, but I dismissed it, confident in our birth control measures. Still, I decided to visit the gynecologist for peace of mind. After the examination, the doctor said,
You're pregnant,
without a smile. I had naively expected a cheerful congratulation, you're pregnant, like in the dramas, but his matter of tone was anticlimactic. As time passed, reality set in and I began to talk to my belly. Thank you for making me a mom. But when did it happen? I pondered and realized the exact date it must have occurred. Though earlier than I planned, I was sure Greg would be happy to know we were having a child. I waited for Greg's return, trying to contain my excitement.
Did something good happen?
Greg asked, noticing my unusual expression. Yes, actually, I'm pregnant.
Pregnant? Who? Wait, you mean?
That's right.
That's strange. Are you sure it's mine?
Excuse me? At Greg's words, it felt as if time had stopped for a moment. Of course it is. You might not remember because you were drunk. Greg thought for a moment and then seemed to recall.
Really? But it's too soon for kids. I'm sorry, but can we not go through with this?
I couldn't believe these were Greg's words. What? No way, this is our child. A blessing. You can't just say that. I'm definitely having this baby.
Seems like there is no convincing you. Go ahead and have it if you want. From heaven to hell.
Greg's indifferent words felt like a fall. His attitude changed dramatically afterwards.
Isn't your morning sickness a bit exaggerated?
Greg, insensitive to my struggles with morning sickness since the early stages of pregnancy, threw harsh words at me. I didn't expect him to fully understand the hardship of morning sickness, but at least a few kind words wouldn't be too much to ask for.
I'll eat out, so don't bother with dinner, or the smell bothers me. I'll sleep in the next room,
he would say, increasingly avoiding me and my frequent nausea. Greg's occasional weekend golf had become a weekly routine, and today, he left early again, invited by his manager. He's forgotten again. I noticed Greg had left his bag behind and thought I might still catch him, so I called his mobile phone. Huh? The sound of a mobile phone vibrating came from inside the bathroom. Looking over, I saw Greg's mobile phone ringing on top of the paper holder. Forgetting your mobile phone too? You're really hopeless. I picked up the phone. Excuse me? I saw the caller ID on the screen. An old hag. An old hag? Who's that? Just then, the sound of the entrance door opening echoed. Greg had come back to retrieve his forgotten item. In a rush, I hit the stop button on my phone and hurriedly put Greg's phone back in its place.
What are you doing?
His eyes narrowed as he snatched his mobile phone. There is no need to yell. I was just about to call you about your forgotten phone.
I'm in a hurry, so...
Without saying anything more, Greg grabbed his bag and phone and left. The words, an old hag, remained vividly etched in my mind. Dizziness overcame me and I slumped to the floor. My heart was pounding. I could hear its beats. I am not so oblivious. I had a vague sense that something was off with Greg's behavior. Yet somewhere in my heart I hoped I was mistaken, but my hopes were shattered. We had planned to go to Greg's parents' house for Christmas, but I couldn't because of severe morning sickness. Say hi to Kaylin and the others for me. As I saw him off at the entrance, Greg pointed at me laughing.
Oh, what's with that outfit? You look like an old woman. It's embarrassing.
How cruel. Such words shouldn't be said even in jest. I could no longer feel a shred of affection. How are you feeling? Is the morning sickness still going on? The day after Greg left, I received a call from my mother-in-law, Kaylin, who expressed her concern. Yes, I'm fine. Sorry, I couldn't come. Don't worry about it, but it's lonely this year since both of you couldn't make it. Both of us? Greg was supposed to have gone to his parents' home. Before I could respond, Kaylin continued, well, it can't be helped. His manager's father passed away and he's always been good to us. That was Greg's excuse for not going home, apparently. What? I hadn't heard such a story. Nell, can you hear me? Yes. Something wrong? Don't keep worries to yourself. It's not good for the baby. Could Greg be cheating? I couldn't possibly say such a thing outright. I'm fine, just feeling a bit unstable. I guess it's because of the pregnancy. After ending the call with Kaylin, I immediately called Greg. Hello, this is Greg's mobile phone. Who's speaking? Oh, sorry, I dialed the wrong number. I quickly hung up, a bit startled. Was it a mistake? I checked the number I had for Greg. Greg. It was correct, and the woman on the phone had mentioned Greg's name twice. My call would be in Greg's call history. He should have called back, but he didn't. Greg's actions were increasingly suspicious. Looking back, there were other strange occurrences. Normally, we would visit his family about 3 times a year, but at Thanksgiving, I went alone. Greg had said he was helping with his manager's mother's funeral service and couldn't go, and now his father? Both parents passing away within 6 months, coinciding with our family visits? Too much of a coincidence. I immediately checked with a colleague from Greg's department. There's no such thing, they said. The frequent golf invitation from his manager had started before I knew I was pregnant. Greg was definitely hiding something, no doubt about it. Then Kaylin called again. Nell, are you really okay? Worried about my downhearted state, she had called again. I explained everything that had happened. I'm so sorry. Kaylin apologizing as if her son's misconduct was her responsibility. You're my precious daughter too. Remember when I was hospitalized before your wedding? You were the first to rush to my side. That's when I knew I could trust you with our future. You would never betray us. I won't forgive anyone who makes my precious daughter cry, even if it's my own son. You're pregnant, don't think strange thoughts. It's not good for the baby. Finally, Kaylin said just make sure you do what you need to do before hanging up. 2 days later, Greg returned as if nothing had happened.
I'm home. The train was crowded. Terrible.
Pretending as if he had just come from his parents' house. In the following month, I got my affairs in order. I submitted my resignation at work. The company was preparing for my maternity leave and smoothly accepted my resignation. It was a relief that I would still receive maternity allowance even though I was resigning half a year before giving birth. Becoming unemployed was a bit daunting when thinking about the future. Of course, I kept my resignation a secret from Greg. I've decided to take a week off starting tomorrow, I told Greg.
You don't have to bother telling me that.
He replied curtly. Although Greg seemed to have lost all interest in me, that actually worked in my favor. The next day, Greg probably left work right on time and came home. He entered the house breathless.
What's going on? Suddenly.
Greg was taken aback, seeing my parents-in-law relaxing on the living room sofa. Indeed, I had informed Greg about the parents-in-law visit via WhatsApp just an hour before his workday ended. Oh, I told Nell in advance. Sorry, I completely forgot to tell Greg. Greg glared at me sideways. Is it inconvenient that we came without notice? Neither of you came home for Christmas. My husband had time off, so we thought we would visit as tourists. Kaylin was a great actress. Greg certainly hadn't expected his parents to show up. He was in deep trouble now with his Christmas lie about to be exposed. Greg, I just heard from Kaylin about the manager's father passing away and his mother passed away at Thanksgiving? Poor manager.
Yeah, that's right.
Greg's face was covered in sweat, not just from the surprise of his timely return home, but also from the fear of being exposed.
Sorry, the funeral service was sudden. I kept quiet because I thought it would be suspicious.
Suspicious? Who would suspect and what exactly? I imagine the same question mark appeared in the minds of the three of us, excluding Greg. Realizing this, Greg quickly changed the subject.
Mom, Dad, have you had dinner yet? Let's go out and then hit a singing bar. It's been a while.
Karaoke was not just mine and Greg's hobby, but also a favorite pastime for my parents-in-law. A family outing to a singing bar was a rare event. We quickly finished dinner and went to the singing bar. Greg, having seemingly forgotten the inconvenient truth from earlier, proudly showcased his singing. He probably thought he was buttering up his parents, but he was actually digging his own grave, completely oblivious to it. Since all four of us are here, let's do a duet. Kaylin took this opportunity to execute her plan. That sounds great. Let's start with David and Kaylin. Show us how it's done. Thanks to Kaylin's quick thinking, an unexpected opportunity came my way. Next up, Greg and Nil. Nil, why don't you pick the song? Okay then. I dragged a reluctant Greg to the stage. The song title displayed on the screen was a recently popular one about infidelity. What? I clearly saw Greg's eyes widen in shock. Oh, a nostalgic choice. Kaylin chimed in. Greg, not even hot, was sweating profusely. As I linked arms with him, Kaylin said directly, Greg, sing more seriously. Are you sweating because you're guilty of something? Speaking of which, when David and I were newly married, I suspected him of infidelity.
Yes, I remember. It was a complete misunderstanding by Kaylin. It taught me never to anger my wife. Greg, you better be careful.
Looking closely at Greg, his sweat-drenched face had turned pale.
I'm fine. Just had a bit too much to drink.
Huh? Drank too much? Greg usually only drinks cola at karaoke, not alcohol. Even today, he only had a sip of beer at first. Oh, are you okay, Greg? Don't overdo it. We are going back to our hotel, so let's call it a night. After saying goodbye to my parents-in-law who returned to their nearby book hotel, Greg and I went back to our condominium. The next morning, leaving Greg at home saying he wasn't feeling well, I went sightseeing with my parents-in-law. Even at night, Greg didn't come out of his room. So I called out, "Hey, are you okay?" Kaylin said they are leaving tomorrow. Seems the unfamiliar hotel is tiring them out. They prefer their own home.
Really? It's a shame I couldn't spend more time with them since they came all this way.
Greg emerged from his room seemingly relieved that his parents were leaving. Also, I have decided to go back with them. Greg appeared completely revived, knowing that the house would be empty except for him a while.
That's good for Mom and Dad. You should relax too, Nell. I'll take you to the station tomorrow.
The next morning, I said goodbye to Greg at the station and left with my parents-in-law. And that night,
Wow.
Greg was shocked, as if he had seen a ghost. He almost collapsed at the sight of me and Kaylin standing at the entrance. Dropping his beer in surprise, it seemed he was literally taken aback. While feeling this, I just looked at Greg coldly without saying a word. Only David, my father-in-law, had actually gone home. Kaylin and I had returned to the condominium after some time. "Oh, you've spilled your beer? No need to be surprised. We are not ghosts, you know."
But Mom, you guys were supposed to go home. Huh?
Yes, David went back alone. I'm staying here tonight since I'm alone, but who might be visiting? There's a woman's coat hanging there.
Oh, that. A colleague from work. Others were here until a moment ago. They left and she's the only one now.
The woman must have hidden when we unexpectedly arrived. Peeking into the room, a young woman timidly appeared from the balcony. Good evening. Oh, sorry, just needed some fresh air. Mr. Greg, I'll be leaving soon. After saying that, she picked up her bag and left. I recognize that woman. Isn't she from Greg's department? Her voice sounded like the one on the phone.
You could have at least informed us. She left in such a shock.
Greg finally stood up and grabbed a new beer from the fridge to drink. You know, it's not good for a married man to be alone with a young woman when his wife is away. Kaylin remarked sarcastically, making Greg spit out his beer. I was thinking of saying hello to your always helpful manager before leaving.
No need to bother going all the way to the manager. It will be a laughing stock for an older woman to show up at the company.
Greg tried desperately to stop Kaylin's action, really, but since you always receive so much help from your manager, I'll just give them a call to express my gratitude. Saying that, Kaylin picked up Greg's mobile phone from the table.
Mom, stop it.
Greg frantically tried to retrieve his phone, but Kaylin was determined. Just lend it to me. It was the first time I saw the usually calm Kaylin raise her voice. Kaylin looked straight into Greg's eyes. Greg, is it really so embarrassing for me to thank your manager?
It's not that, but...
Unable to meet Kaylin's eyes, Greg responded in a small voice. Then it's fine, Greg, you make the call. Greg seemed to realize he couldn't anger his mother any further. Suddenly, he bowed his head towards Kaylin.
Mom, sorry, I meant to tell you the truth. The girl from earlier, it's not just a fling. Actually, she's pregnant. So I'm going to marry her and take responsibility.
What? I was utterly stunned by Greg's shocking confession. Greg, do you realize what you're saying? There's also your child in Nell's womb. How will you take responsibility for that?
It's Nell's fault. She decided to have the baby despite my opposition, and I can't even be sure if the baby's really mine. I mean, it happened just once unexpectedly. How can I trust that?
Kaylin? Kaylin snatched the beer from Greg's hand and threw it in his face.
What are you doing?
Does this not wake you up? I was thinking I wouldn't disown you if you sincerely apologized to Nell. And what about that girl just now? If she intended to marry you, why did she run away like that? Greg was left speechless, effectively admitting to their fear. There's no more room for leniency. If you say Nell's child isn't yours, then you are no longer my child either. From today, our ties as parent and child are severed. You understand, right? And you're forbidden from visiting our home or meeting the baby. I'll make sure you pay for hurting my daughter Nell. Tell your new wife too.
Mom?
Greg couldn't say anything more in the face of Kaylin's fury. Of course, even if she said they were cutting ties, it doesn't sever the legal family registration bond. Yet, that was the extent of Kaylin's feelings. This husband, he hurt not only me, his wife, but also his own mother. You can leave Kaylin and the others to me. Take care of your new wife and the child in her womb. Now, please sign these divorce papers and leave the keys to the condominium. I place the divorce papers and keys on the table. Let's go, Kaylin. I had already had my belongings picked up by movers. I never returned to the condominium. The next day, I finished my resignation at the company and went home with Kaylin. A few days after returning home, I received a WhatsApp message from Greg. The main points were, he filed the divorce papers, he would give me all the money we had saved together, asking me not to hire a lawyer. No words of regret, no apology, just thinking about his own skin. I had no more lingering feelings. A few days after receiving WhatsApp from Greg, the father of his affair partner went out of his way to visit our family soon.
I am terribly sorry for the trouble my daughter has caused.
He didn't want the matter to become public and offered settlement money. It turned out she wasn't even pregnant. Greg separated from her and resigned from his job. From what I heard from a colleague, that woman left the company and soon got engaged to another man. Rumors suggested that her parents hastily arranged a match to vanish her relationship with Greg like mist, pushing her into a new engagement. Greg divorced his pregnant wife. After that, a female employee from Greg's department resigned. These are the only two facts officially recorded at the company. Anything about Greg's relationship with that woman or their subsequent lives remain mere whispers and rumors. Nevertheless, labeled as the lowest man who cheated on his pregnant wife, Greg managed to turn all the female employees at his company against him. Unable to bear the scandal, Greg left the company 6 months later. The marital bond was severed, but the connection between me and his parents continued. To me, parents-in-law were technically adopted parents. Before our marriage, Greg had said,
eventually, Dad and Mom will be under Nell's care, so I want Nell to have a share of the inheritance.
He had asked his parents to adopt me. I had lost my parents early and was raised by my grandparents. Knowing my family circumstances, parents-in-law had adopted me as their daughter. It's safer for you to give birth here. Kaylin made various arrangements so I could deliver near my childhood home. Thanks to her efforts, I safely gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Hoping he would grow up humble and kind, my adopted parents named him Charles. Mom! My 3-year-old son, playing with Kaylin in the yard, ran up to me. I'm home! I picked up my son gazing at the sunset. Everyone perceives happiness in their own way. I want to show my son various beautiful scenes in life.
Nell, stay strong.
I felt as if my father and mother, who had passed away early, were smiling at me from the heavens.
My name is Selena. I'm a newbie, just graduated from college and got a job. Selena, you're still in training, aren't you? What's training like? Any cool colleagues or seniors? On my day off, my childhood friend Nina, who's been with me since kindergarten through college, asks with keen interest. She went on to grad school, so she's still a student. She bombards me with questions, curious about the corporate world I've stepped into ahead of her. The general training is done. Now I'm training in various departments. My company is kind of like a sports club, you know? We start the morning with exercises. There's even a shout out. What? That's unusual. It is. Health comes first, which I totally get. We even have activities like clubs. Right now, there's tennis, football, and a jogging club. Are you forced to join? Not at all. But newcomers are encouraged to try out any clubs they're interested in a few times, then decide if they want to join. Wow, what a fun company. What about you, Selena? I joined the jogging club. I wouldn't exercise on my own, and it seemed like a good way to stay fit. Plus, it's at my own pace, not too strict. That's admirable. I wouldn't join any. I don't like exercising. You can quit anytime, and it's a good way to network, especially for newbies. It's a chance to meet people from other departments. Oh, I see. It's like an extension of a club where you can interact across different ages and departments, which is fun. Though my company isn't very large, the camaraderie, perhaps thanks to these extracurricular activities, is strong among employees and part-timers alike. Even though I'm only in my first year, I already like the company and want to do my best. But don't you seem a bit tired despite all that? Wow, you notice everything, don't you? I'm impressed by my friend's sharp observation. Indeed, I like the company's atmosphere, and I don't mind being busy, but there is one person who has become a significant concern for me. Thinking of quitting? Young people nowadays really have no perseverance. You've been useless from the start. I hear Mrs. Smith's voice, the president's wife, chiding Catherine, a part-time worker who has been absent for a few days. They should be in a private room used for meetings and interviews, but the door is intentionally left open, and Mrs. Smith's shrill voice spills out onto the floor. The open door seems to be her way of showing that the conversation is meant to be heard by everyone, cornering the person she's talking to. Catherine must be feeling intimidated. You're taking off without notice and neglecting your duties for days, and now you want to quit? Don't think you can just escape because it's a part-time job. I won't let you use your paid leave. I'll deduct from your salary for the days you missed. Her tone has gone beyond sarcasm. It's almost terrifying. The last day Catherine came to work, I saw her with tears in her eyes. Are you okay? Did something happen? I got scolded by Mrs. Smith again. I'm doing my job seriously, but she just doesn't seem to like me. I've been feeling unwell lately. She spoke in a trembling, faint voice. It must have taken a lot of courage for her to come in for the last time and tender her resignation. Paid leave and resignation are workers' rights, and I wish Mrs. Smith would just let her be without any further bullying, I thought with a sigh. This was the third time I'd witnessed such an incident in just 3 months since joining the company. Mrs. Smith, who's also an executive, seems to be in charge of human resources. However, she leaves the actual HR work to the department heads and employees, appearing only interested in controlling aspects like hiring, firing, and assignments. She has a few favorite young male employees, and she's all sweet and gentle when speaking with them. And apparently, women who get along with her favorites become targets of her unreasonable bullying. This is what I've heard from the seniors in the jogging club, and it seems to align with what I've seen and heard. Mr. Smith, the president and her husband, is usually out working hard himself and is rarely in the office. When he is around, she doesn't show her anger, so he probably doesn't know about her behavior. And there's no one who could possibly report it to him. Mr. Smith is a man of character who respects the opinions of his employees, even in his busy schedule. It's hard to believe that his wife, Mrs. Smith, could be such a person. Perhaps having accepted the resignation, Mrs. Smith emerged from the conference room, searching through papers as she walked across the floor. Tears brimmed in Catherine's eyes, following behind. It takes effort to replace staff, you know. Find someone for the part-time job, finish the handover, then you can leave. That's common courtesy, right? Mrs. Smith's plea for agreement sent a wave of tension through the employees present. Everyone pretended to focus on their work, yet they couldn't ignore her, nodding reluctantly. Amidst this, "Oh, you look like you want to say something." Well... It seems my empathetic gaze towards Catherine had caught Mrs. Smith's attention, sizing me up. If you're getting paid, you should take responsibility for your job, whether you're a full-time employee or a part-timer. Yes. Her words were correct, if taken at face value. I had no choice but to agree, despite my objections. Good. It's unacceptable to take time off on a whim or quit in the middle of a contract period, isn't it? Yes, but I mean, the moment I began to object, I was met with a glare that silenced me. Remember, self-centered behavior is not acceptable. Order is important. Those who work properly, I do appreciate, right? In the end, I couldn't say anything, and Catherine remained bowed, like an example for all. Later, some sales employees returned, and Mrs. Smith, perhaps seeing her favorites among them, approached them with a bright smile, a stark contrast to her earlier demeanor. I'm frustrated with myself for not being able to do anything for Catherine, and for giving in to Mrs. Smith. Ugh, it's hard to believe such people exist. No wonder you're stressed. Sorry, I didn't mean to vent. It's okay, you shouldn't bottle it up. And you really couldn't argue, could you? If you did, you'd be the next target. Be careful. You're right. By the way, there was a senior from the jogging club among the sales staff. He came to talk to me afterward, and I felt really watched. Eek, scary. Is that senior good looking? Maybe he's one of Mrs. Smith's favorites. I'm not sure. Oh, but more importantly, I remembered and changed the subject. Remember the trip we talked about? I couldn't decide between the 2 hotels you mentioned. Both are lovely, but since Grandpa and Grandma love seafood, I'm thinking of going with this one. What do you think? Right, that was the main topic. She's well versed in traveling with her family and had been advising me. If they love fish, then yes, this one's the right choice. My fussy grandmother was very satisfied with it, so it's definitely a good pick. My friend recommended it confidently, with a smile. I'm glad. I've been wanting to show my appreciation, and I hope they'll be happy. I had been saving up little by little for a trip with my grandparents, Curtis and Ashley, who raised me after my parents passed away when I was young. They always put me first, and supported me, and I wanted to give something back. So I decided to take them on a trip, choosing a luxury hotel to treat them, thanks to my savings from part-time jobs during college and my first paycheck. Traveling with their granddaughter will surely make them happy. They'll love it. Yeah. Her smile made me smile as well. However, on the Friday afternoon before the trip, Mrs. Smith called me in. Here, the resumes and job histories of new part-time job candidates. Compile these into the data, and make interview sheets too. Isn't that HR's job? Why me? Well, as a newcomer, you should be experiencing different kinds of work, right? You seemed interested in HR work when that part-timer quit the other day. How did it come to this? I disliked sympathizing with Catherine, but it wouldn't do any good to object. How long do I have? By Monday morning. What, next week? Of course. Please wait, today is Friday. I have my own work to finish too. Finish your tasks first, then work on this. You can come in over the weekend. I'll make sure you're compensated for working on a holiday. She smiled sweetly. Her beautiful smile looked to me like the grin of a witch. We have interviews scheduled for Monday, so don't be late. Oh, and look at past files to summarize the trends of those who were hired. Here, take this. A thick file was placed before me. Is all of this mine to do? Confused and at a loss for words, she said triumphantly as if she had won. I'm glad you understand. You've been ignoring directions and acting frivolously at work lately. Getting off to a good start is crucial. I had no idea what she was referring to. Unable to tolerate such baseless accusations, I decided to speak up. With all due respect, it's Friday and there are less than 2 hours left in the workday. I also have my current assignments. It's impossible to finish all this by the start of next week, even with overtime. I tried to keep my tone as calm as possible while holding back my boiling frustration. Ever since Catherine's resignation, it seemed she had pegged me as her next target, subtly harassing me. She'd make requests for errands or shopping specifically when I was busiest, give incorrect copying instructions, then blame me for delays in meetings. Even during jogging club activities, I'd feel her sharp gaze on me. I'd been managing the daily stress, but the prospect of it affecting the trip I was looking forward to was too much, especially being given an unmanageable amount of work that wasn't even my responsibility. She seemed unfazed by my objections. That's why I said you could come in over the weekend? Oh, and HR materials are confidential, so don't take them home. Wait a minute. I tried to argue, but she cut me off. I have plans now, so I must go. Please take care of it. And with that, she left. The next day, as planned, I was under the open sky on a trip with my grandparents. They looked at me with concern, stifling yawns. Are you sure you're okay? Going on a trip right after an all-nighter. We can postpone it if you need to. Don't worry, I was really looking forward to today's trip. Despite my reassurances, they were worried about me rushing back just in time for departure after working all night. I had informed them, but I must have caused concern the night before. No, this trip is supposed to be fun. I have to make sure they enjoy it. I psyched myself up internally and smiled at my grandparents. Look, the sea is so beautiful. I'm glad it's sunny. Hey, don't worry about me. We're close to the sea, so the seafood will be delicious. Can't wait. Showing excitement, they finally relaxed and started to take in the scenery. But even amidst the joy, an unbelievable nightmare awaited. Did you finish the work I assigned? You didn't just abandon it, did you? A familiar voice intruded on my ears while I was checking into the hotel and wandering the halls alone. Mrs. Smith? It felt as if Beethoven's Fate was playing in my head. I felt it. Why is the witch here? Of all places to run into her? As if hearing my internal monologue, she laughed mockingly. I gave you homework to ruin your floating weekend plans, yet here you are, ignoring my instructions. Her words echoed like a witch's curse, making my head spin. Are you saying you deliberately assigned me work to coincide with my trip as harassment? Knowing about my plans and sabotaging them with impossible demands filled me with anger. Anger arises. But how did you know where I would be staying? I knew she sometimes eavesdropped on the female employees, but I was astonished she would go this far. Weren't you chatting happily during lunch break and at the jogging club? Going on about where you'll go, how nice it must be, flaunting it. It's laughable. Eavesdropping? It's your fault for boasting about it. Realizing that even casual conversations with colleagues and seniors had been carefully monitored chilled me to the bone. Anyway, this hotel is above your station. What? I looked puzzled, and she sighed dramatically. Do you not understand? This is a luxury hotel, not a place for someone like you. You're an eyesore. A payroll thief and a good-for-nothing should go to the old hotel next door. I managed to suppress the anger welling up inside and said, I don't understand what you mean. I get that you find me bothersome, but the rest is just harassment and insult, isn't it? I wasn't shirking work, nor had I done anything to her, yet I was subjected to her unreasonable attacks every day. And why should my precious time with my grandparents be ruined? That's it. I was about to make a decisive retort, perhaps even if it meant resigning, when it happened. So that's what this is about. A calm voice, out of place in this tense situation, came from behind. Grandma! Grandpa, too! I thought my grandparents were back in the room having coffee, but there they were, standing behind me. Judging by their expressions, they had heard almost the entire conversation. This is... I began, flustered, trying to explain, but my grandmother interrupted me and addressed Mrs. Smith. Pleased to meet you. I'm Selena's grandmother, Johnson, who has been acting as her parent for many years. The honorific chairman of Johnson Products, the company that had dealings with yours recently, would be a faster introduction. Grandma greeted her with a relaxed tone. Mrs. Smith's face turned pale upon hearing that. J. Johnson Products? Her voice squeaked in surprise. The industry leader? And you're the honorific chairman? But the employee here has a different surname. Well, that's not strange at all. My daughter didn't take her husband's name when she married. She changed to his surname instead. Being part of a renowned founding family of a famous company, she preferred to stay under the radar. No. As for this child, perhaps she takes after her mother. She could have joined our company, but she wanted a job hunt on her own to earn her place. I'm terribly sorry. I had no idea. Mrs. Smith's face drained of color. Do you think being unaware gives you the right to commit any kind of rudeness? Or do you differentiate people by their family background? No, that's not. In contrast to my serene grandmother, Mrs. Smith was sweating and frozen, despite her well-made-up face. I wonder if you could pass a message to your president. The business deal your staff discussed with us the other day, we'll be considering it void. No, please wait. Ignoring Mrs. Smith's almost shrieking voice, my grandmother continued. I heard that the company my granddaughter joined was focusing on health first, even having sports clubs, and it seemed like a fun place to work. Grandma said, with Grandpa nodding beside her. And after the recent business meeting, we heard Mr. Smith was a man of good character, suitable for a good partnership. But to think Mrs. Smith is such a person? What a shame. While maintaining her calm tone, my grandmother sharply cut her off. Let's go, Selena. Turning to me, she said with a smile. Wait, the deal! Mrs. Smith, quivering, tried to cling to my grandmother's back, but Grandma dismissed her with, It's too late to change your attitude now, leaving her collapsed on the spot. Please, could you mediate something for me? I don't mind about the work from yesterday. Just... After being coldly dismissed by my grandmother, Mrs. Smith turned to me with an astonishingly quick change of face. I refuse. And for the record, I didn't abandon the work you dumped on me yesterday. I completed it before I came here. Check it tomorrow. I was filled with a desire to shout back at her for all the injustice I had endured. But following my grandmother's example, I even managed to answer with a smile. And then, at the company on Monday, the sales department, having been thrilled about the deal with Johnson Products, was abuzz with the news that the deal was off. Apparently, Mrs. Smith had done something. Look here! Mrs. Smith, looking frantic, approached me. Did you already communicate the cancellation of the deal? It's too sudden from yesterday to today. I'm sorry, but I have no insight into Johnson Products' actions. And you, arranging the interview materials. I hear you had everyone in HR help you. What authority does a newcomer have to do such a thing? I gave the permission. Huh? The one who entered saying that was Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, good morning. Everyone greeted him in unison. You? The appearance of her husband, the president, seemed to startle her. Last Friday night, when I returned from a business trip and came to this floor for some work, I saw the newcomer, her, rushed off her feet with work, and everyone else looking worried but not helping. Something seemed off, so I asked her what was going on. Prompted by Mr. Smith, he explained to her, still not grasping the situation. Mrs. Smith had given me HR work to complete by the start of the week, and instructed me to work over the weekend if necessary. But I realized that it was impossible to do it all by myself. Just then, Mr. Smith arrived, and I was able to consult with others around. I talked to the HR staff, too. They said you forced the work onto her and expressly forbade anyone from helping her. The need for interview preparation is real, but analysis and summarization of past files weren't urgent. Why did you give her HR work in the first place? That's because, as a newcomer, she should experience everything, right? She said she was interested in part-time job recruitment. I hadn't said that, but she was sticking to her usual forceful logic. I thought to myself, classic witch. I thrust into my heart. But Mr. Smith elegantly ignored her excuse. I could have told her not to do it, but she said she would. Since the interview materials were indeed needed by today, I allowed those remaining in HR to help her. So maybe I miscalculated the amount of work to assign? But it's okay, right? It all got resolved in the end. The main issue is this. I've been focusing on sales recently and haven't been able to show my face here much. But I've heard that part-time staff keep quitting because of you. Who said that? They left on their own. It's a nuisance for us that they're so irresponsible, right? She looked around for agreement, but no one consented. Instead, cold stares concentrated on her. Our company values health first, which refers to both physical and mental health. It's fine to work hard, but overloading with work, pressure from superiors, and weakening the spirit are unacceptable. Mr. Smith's voice resonated across the floor, and I almost wanted to applaud. And to burden her, who's been working hard to be filial to her grandparents, with unreasonable demands just for harassment. I find that utterly despicable. It's not like that. And then to barge in on her holiday with her grandparents. What is that about? You're no longer welcome here. What? What are you saying? Go on, get out. Mr. Smith, what did you say? Even I was surprised by this. It's not just between us. I apologize for the Johnson Products matter. We'll ask her to speak to Mrs. Johnson once more. You made a terrible scene at the hotel. And who did you go with? It seemed like she was struck by an unexpected arrow, speechless. I tilt my head, not understanding what it means. I learned of the unreasonable work assigned to her on Friday night. I heard about her trip with her grandparents then. And on Saturday, you suddenly left saying you were going away overnight with a friend. The formidable witch was nowhere to be seen. She now stood there, face pale, trembling. It struck me as odd. The investigation is complete. We'll discuss this further in private. Mr. Smith looked at Mrs. Smith, then addressed the entire floor. Sorry for the disturbance. Everyone, please start your work. I will personally handle the Johnson Products issue. Please bear with us a little longer. Mrs. Smith, now ashen-faced, seemed unable to speak, slumping defeated. A month later, the former president's wife had fallen from grace. It wasn't just bullying of part-timers and female staff, but she had been having an affair with a young male contract employee. It was well known that she targeted women who got along with her favorites, but no one had suspected infidelity. The man she had brought to the trip was the same male contract employee. It was surprising because he was planning to leave after his contract ended and seemed to have been involved with her casually, thinking it was all just a game. When Mr. Smith asked, he apparently spilled everything without much thought. Not the brightest bulb. To think she would risk her life with such a man while married to Mr. Smith, a man of such good character. The lady herself is not too bright either. Meanwhile, our company successfully managed to make a deal with my grandmother's company, as originally planned. Apparently, the deal was sealed thanks to Mr. Smith's prompt and sincere actions after the incident. Johnson Products was already eager, and this only solidified their decision. It's a sobering thought for me, too. At the company, people found out I was the granddaughter of Johnson Products, saying things like, "You got a job on your own? You've got guts. You don't seem like a lady." Which I laughingly replied, "Because I'm not. Huh." Everyone loved me and said, "I'll continue to train hard from now on." And no one changed their attitude. Now, without any worries, I am saving up bit by bit for another trip with my grandparents. It will take time, but wait for me, Grandma and Grandpa. My colleagues, my precious family. I cherish the time I have with the people around me, treasuring it like the most valuable thing.